into authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us, from personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation. Good evening, Tea Talkers. It's Tanisha Talks Teas, and I'm back up to fill you guys' teacup up with some more tea. Let's get into day 9 of Diddy. Okay. Diddy, day 9. What's going on? Let's see. Let me go ahead and start my screen sharing. How is everybody on this Thursday? I see a lot of graduating children. Congratulations to all of the graduating children. Have a blessed and happy summer. Parents, don't lose your mind. There is plenty of tea to sip this summer, so I'm going to be here a lot of the time. I'm sipping tea, filling y'all's teacups out. Let's get into Diddy Day 9. We are going to wrap up. How about yesterday? Day 8. Okay.
Before we begin, please be advised that viewer discretion is strongly recommended.
When you guys come into the room, please like and subscribe. Fill your teacup up, like and subscribe. Let me go ahead and enlarge the screen for you guys. And let's get into wrap up day 8 and jump into day 9.
None of the content presented here has been exaggerated or taken out of context. These are the exact statements made by the prosecution team, defense team, Agent Gannon, Dr. Hughes, and Kaplan in a federal court on May 21st, 2025. Some words have been censored to comply with YouTube's guidelines. What you're about to hear is a voiced-over reading of Agent Gannon, Dr. Hughes, and Kaplan's testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Source: courtroom reporter at Inner City Press on X.com. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty. Listen at your own discretion. What you're about to hear is Agent Gannon, Dr. Hughes, and Kaplan's testimony from beginning to end.
Okay, so we are going to get into some more testimony from some doctors, some FBI agents. I'm believing that's what that was. Okay, thank you, Viral Visions, for minutes of the trial. And it's translated into a voiceover so we can hear it read to us, okay? We're going to wrap up day 8 and jump into day 9 of testimonies of the Diddy trial. We're up to day 9. We're still in the beginning of the trial, but yet it seems like it's been going on forever, like it's been so much testimony. Okay, let's begin.
Mr. Gannon, let's continue with items you seized on Star Island GX215. What is this?
High heels and sex items in the master closet.
What's this?
3 cell phones found in one of the boots.
Display the Gucci bag for the jury. Pull up GX10A and the stipulation. Zoom in on paragraph 5. A white plastic bottle. It contained liquid residue of meth and liquid MDMA. These pills were found with a Tesla imprint on them. These had the active ingredient in Xanax. This $100 bill had residue of cocaine. Mr. Gannon, what's this?
A dark wood box with the word puffy on the top.
How do you know that this is the Astroglide and the baby oil that you seized? How many bottles of each?
31 Astroglide, 25 baby oil bottles.
Any other cell phones found?
Yes.
Was a gun found in this suitcase?
A .45.
Hold the bullets up for the jury. No further questions.
The day of the search, you knew that Mr. Combs was leaving the country with his twin daughters.
At this moment, the prosecution asked for a sidebar. Then they continued.
In planning the search, you knew that none of the targets of the investigation would be there.
At this moment, the prosecution objected but was overruled.
The plan was to have him not there, but we had contingencies.
What type of vehicles did you use?
Armored vehicle.
And a boat come in by land and by sea?
It's common practice.
80 or 90 agents?
Not all at the same time.
You found 6 people and kept them in handcuffs for an hour.
No, ma'am. There was one individual who wasn't happy with us and wasn't cooperating, so we kept him in handcuffs longer.
Because he wasn't happy with cuffs? There was a music studio in the guest house, right? DX305. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am. It's the studio.
Move to admit, the gun was wrapped in a towel. It didn't look like how you displayed it to the jury yesterday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you find any photos of Mr. Combs with these firearms?
We did not.
Do you agree that handguns, metal, is easier to get fingerprint than maybe another type of device?
Can't say if it's easier, but it can be done.
Can you get prints off a gun easier when it's inside?
I think so.
At HSI, you have Mr. Combs' DNA, right?
I don't know.
When he was arrested, the government took DNA swab, right?
I don't know.
Hold up the Gucci bag. The drugs were in this bag and in the puffy box, right?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to introduce a sealed exhibit with the help of IT. May I approach the witness?
At this moment, the defense approached the witness, and the prosecution said to cut off the screens. So the gallery wasn't able to see this, but the defense said,
Please don't say the names of the people in this photograph other than my client. Don't talk about it.
Then the prosecution asked to confer with the counsel they did. Then the deputy said, we may take the sealed exhibit down, and they continued.
Agent Gannon, you live in Florida. Don't many people have guns in their homes there?
At this moment, the prosecution objected, and the judge told the defense to rephrase the question.
Do you have guns in your home?
Yes.
No further questions.
The government calls Dr. Dawn Hughes. What is your profession?
Clinical and forensic psychology. I treated people who were in World War II, which was such an honor.
How many times have you testified in court?
60 or 65 in SDNY, ENDY, and the Northern District. Also New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Virginia.
We offered Dr. Hughes as an expert. What do you anticipate covering?
Why victims stay. Memory.
Have you been retained by the government?
Yes.
What is your hourly rate?
$600, $6,000 for the day in court.
Why do victims stay?
There are psychological bonds and the psychological consequences of the abuse.
What are the levels of fear?
It ranges from physical violence to butterflies. Violence doesn't have to happen all the time.
What is psychological violence?
Intimidation, throwing things, telling you what you can do and where you can go.
At this moment, the defense objected, and the judge said, hold on, I'm going to strike that last answer. Then continued.
What can be the role of sexual abuse?
It puts the victim in significant psychological fear.
Why does it prevent leaving?
Shame, degradation. They don't want to think about it.
What is emotional abuse?
Putting down our partner, feeling like a piece of crap.
What about financial dependence?
The abuse controls housing and transportation, taking away her laptop.
At this moment, the defense objected, and the judge sustained it.
Are you familiar with love bombing?
That honeymoon phase, the abuser showers her with gifts and affection to get her back.
Does the attempt to leave happen over time?
Yes, it takes multiple attempts.
Which is the most common coping mechanism?
Trying to work it out because of the trauma bond. You don't want to lose your partner.
Personal coping mechanisms. How does placating or appeasing work?
We're trying to avoid abuse.
What is minimization?
The victim says, maybe they had a bad day at work. Maybe they were intoxicated. It's a way to stay in the relationship, but it increases their risk. It's not a long-term strategy. It gets from one episode to next.
What about the power relation?
A person can have power as principal of a school. The victim asks, who is going to believe me?
When does the victim finally speak?
In a safe environment or after psychological help.
What type of language do victims use when they first speak of it?
They minimize. They are piecemeal. They remember the chipping paint on the ceiling, the smell of alcohol on the perpetrator's breath.
At this moment, they had a sidebar in the court. Then the cross-examination began.
Your clients, you observe them closely, their cognitive style.
Yes,
People don't fit into boxes, right?
there are categories.
But you have to listen to particular individuals, right?
I'm not divorced from my training.
When you do forensic work, you want a lot of sources of information, right?
If it's relevant,
You look at police reports, witness reports, and the like, correct?
correct.
You're familiar with malingering?
I am.
People can fabricate emotional responses, correct?
They can.
At this moment, the judge said, Mr. Bach, should we break here? And the defense said,
I don't have a good cliffhanger.
and they ended up going on break.
You are with the American Psychological Association, which says you should only render an opinion after an examination, right?
Where? This is a different role.
You have not gathered information about this case, right?
I am not rendering an opinion on any individual.
There's someone named Cassie, but you don't know what she said, right?
I don't.
You're testified across the river in EDNY, right?
Right.
And you say the same thing, even though the cases are different, correct?
It's to help the jurors understand.
But it's their job to consider their case, right? You don't publish data on the patients you have evaluated, do you?
It's confidential.
So I can't cross-check your experience, the basis of what you were saying, right? People might go to a civil lawyer to make a little money, right?
At this moment, the prosecution objected, and the judge said, let's move on.
In civil litigation, you might look for malingering, right? You gave a webinar about giving expert witness testimony, right?
Yes, for battered women.
Let me show you DX-.
At this moment, the judge asked for a sidebar.
Does this document refresh your recollection?
Let me look at it more closely. Yes?
The fourth part is about navigating cross-examination, right?
Yes?
Most of your income comes from court-related work, right?
No, maybe half.
You've raised your rate to $600,
It's been the same for some time.
but you've raised it.
Commensurate with others.
You've been retained hundreds of times, but you've never come into court and testified in defense of a man accused of a sex crime?
That's correct. I don't evaluate offenders.
You met with the prosecutor 6 times to prepare your testimony, right?
Correct.
At this moment, the prosecution asked for a sidebar and then continued.
Did you discuss the topics with the prosecutors?
With all due respect, it was mostly me educating them.
But you know nothing about the case. Were you advising them on how to present evidence in domestic violence cases? Didn't you help them write briefs?
At this moment, the prosecution asked for a sidebar. Once it was finished, they continued with a recross.
You reviewed some filings to the court in this case. It was all related to the subject of your expert testimony, right?
Correct.
In fact, we redacted.
You did.
You are a board-certified forensic psychologist, right?
Yes.
How many of those are there in New York State?
I think about 40.
At this moment, another recross happened.
Your defense work is almost entirely for victims of domestic violence, right?
I'm not sure that's true.
You worked with Mr. O'Brien Steele, who was defending a woman charged with reacting to domestic violence, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Steele decided not to use you after meeting with you.
At this moment, the judge interrupted and told the defense to move on. And so they did. There were no further questions, and the prosecution called its next witness.
The government calls George Kaplan. When did you work for Combs Enterprises?
2013 to 2015.
What fell under that holding company?
Clothing, liquor, entertainment. I was executive assistant to the chief operating officer.
Where did you work?
1710 Broadway, NYC.
What was your next position?
Executive assistant to the chairman, Mr. Combs, from September 2014 to September 2015.
Who did you report to?
Ms. Coram, KK, she essentially ran Mr. Combs's life.
Where did you report?
L.A.
What did you do?
Carried his bags, made sure things were when he wanted them. As he trusted me more, he had me around more. I'd set up hotel rooms.
How many hours a week?
80 to 100 hours a week.
How much did you get paid?
$125,000 a year to start.
What did you do in the morning?
Make sure everything was in the bathroom, the breakfast cooked. He was recording a mixtape, so we worked late.
Who was security?
Uncle Paulie, D-Rock, and Ruben. Later, licensed security in the second half of 2015.
How frequently did you communicate with Mr. Combs?
Multiple times a day. Things could be found in the back, an iPad, drugs, whatever.
Did he threaten you?
He threatened my job.
How often?
Maybe monthly. He'd say he was only to be surrounded by the best people and that he wasn't. For example, he went me for a 1-liter water and I bought back 2 half-liters. He said, no,
How did you travel?
on his jet, or going in advance to make sure it's all set up.
How did you set up hotel rooms?
There was a bag. I unpacked it. Clothes, candle, Astroglide, baby oil.
Who bought this?
Often me.
In what cities did you set up hotel rooms?
Los Angeles, New York, and Miami. In LA, Mr. C, Bel Air, the Intercontinental.
In NY?
Trump by Columbus Circle. In Miami, the SLS
How was it booked?
and Frank Black, based on Biggie's Frank White.
Would you clean up rooms?
Yes, bottles of baby oil, Gatorade, once brown crystallized powder on the counter of the bathroom sink.
Why did you clean up? Not hotel staff.
It was implied, protect his public image. I was keen on doing that.
Explain.
At this moment, the defense objected and the judge overruled it.
I found hotels would sell photos to newspapers to shame guests.
Did he reach out to you from the room?
For food, clothes, sometimes drugs. I did it.
What drugs?
Dop kit.
Illegal drugs?
At this moment, the defense objected to the word illegal, and the prosecution rephrased the question.
What other drugs?
Advil, ketamine.
What's he ask for?
I picked up drugs for him, MDMA.
Who asked?
Mr. Combs in LA and Miami. In Miami, Mr. Combs asked me to call a person. He came and gave me a bag of pills, MDMA. I gave him cash. I gave the pills to Mr. Combs.
And in LA?
I went out and met the person in Hollywood. I gave money. He gave me a bag.
At this moment, the judge said, "We will break for the day." And those were all of the testimonies today in the Diddy trial. What did you think about the testimonies today? Who do you think did better overall today? The defense or the prosecution? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, sippers, thank you for joining. Please, when you enter, like and subscribe as you get your teacup filled up. Okay, so that was the explosive voiceover reading of the agent that raided Diddy's homes and also the psychiatrist. Do you think the agent that raided Diddy's home, the things that he found, the Astroglide, the box with the residue and things like that, do you think that hurt Diddy, or do you think it, won't really much matter in a RICO case? What do you guys think? Do you guys think that the doctor that testified, not hearing Cassie's testimony, however, knowing about, whatever it was she was going to be attesting to, relevant to, similar things of what Cassie testified about, do you think that helped, or do you think that hurt? Drop that in the chat along with those teacups. We're going to now get into Kid Cudi. Okay, Kid Cudi
Before we begin,
testimony,
please be advised that viewer
today, I hear it's wild, so let's give it a listen. Thank you for joining this evening. We are reviewing the Diddy trial, wrapping up day 8 and coming into today, which is day 9, y'all, okay? Today's Thursday, so we always review the United States versus Diddy TMZ show that is airing all throughout the entire Diddy trial. So as long as I can catch that with you guys, then I'll do it today. If not, then we'll do it another day, okay? So let's see. Let's get this pulled up. So this is Kid Cudi, y'all, okay? It's got to go through all of its censorship guidelines. So, let's review this and sip this tea.
Discretion is strongly recommended. None of the content presented here has been exaggerated or taken out of context. These are the exact statements made by the prosecution team, defense team, Scott Muscati, Mila Morales, Frederick Zemmour, Josh Croft, in a federal court on May 22nd, 2025. Some words have been censored to comply with YouTube's guidelines. What you're about to hear is a voiced-over reading of Scott Muscati, Mila Morales, Frederick Zemmour, Josh Croft's testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Source: courtroom reporter at Inner City Press on X.com. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty. Listen at your own discretion. What you're about to hear is Scott Muscati, Mila Morales, Frederick Zemmour, Josh Croft's testimony from beginning to end.
When did you carry cash for Mr. Combs?
$50,000 on his private jet.
Did you pick up cash for Mr. Combs?
$10,000 at Western Union from Combs Enterprises.
What long-term relationships of Mr. Combs were you aware of?
Cassie, Kim, Gina.
Who was Kim?
Mother of his children.
Cassie?
Girlfriend.
Gina?
Another girlfriend.
The jet flight to Las Vegas? What was the layout of the jet?
4 chairs, a partition. I had a partial view over my right shoulder.
When you witnessed violence by Mr. Combs on Ms. Ventura, why didn't you intervene?
My career.
After the last glass breaking, what did Mr. Combs do?
He came forward. Cassie stayed in the back. He asked me to get creams to conceal the bruising on her face.
How did you pay for it?
Corporate credit card.
Why did you leave Combs Enterprises?
I didn't think I should be covering things up, like buying the witch hazel. Also, my father had prostate cancer.
Any of violence?
He threw things at Gina in the entryway of the main home on Star Island.
What was he throwing?
Green apples.
How hard?
Very hard. Later, I took the medicine bag into their room. Mr. Combs wanted me to leave quickly.
Then what?
I heard Gina at the gate and male voices.
Who?
Security.
When you left, what did you do?
I collected myself, then went to work for an integrated marketing firm.
Why did you go to work for Combs Enterprises?
He was an incredible entrepreneur. I have learned from him.
What did Brian do as COO?
Ensuring profitability of each unit. I was an employee when Revolt TV launched.
Tell me about it.
We were on the 6th floor of 1710 Broadway. Everyone was there. It was momentous.
Diversity was important to Mr. Combs.
Specifically for African Americans.
What did Blue Flame do?
Marketing for Ciroc.
What is Diageo?
They own Johnny Walker and others. Mr. Combs set up a marketing entity for Ciroc.
Your job, what was it?
For example, Mr. Combs would say, "We are going to leave the house." He meant 3 to 5 minutes. I had a checklist for the bags and toiletry. It was a bad look in me if something wasn't in there.
Is there a binder near you? I can't read that.
It says Southern District,
I'm handing you something to refresh your recollection. Take a look at it as long as you want to. You ran an off-site training, a graduate from Harvard Business School. Also Kenny Burns.
I remember.
You were effective, right?
I worked hard.
I don't know how you'll answer. Was it good or bad?
Complicated.
He didn't need to yell at you when you brought 2 waters.
I worked hard.
Okay, who was Biggie?
A huge rapper who unfortunately passed away.
Wasn't Biggie's birthday a holiday at Combs Enterprises?
Yes.
Was it a creative environment?
Absolutely. It attracted all kinds of creative people. Lawyers, musicians, advertising people.
You used a corporate credit card?
Yes.
How did Mr. Combs pay?
KK held his wallet with a Black American Express in it.
You have no reason to think he kept track of how baby oil was paid for?
No reason.
Or applesauce?
He loves applesauce.
On cheeseburgers?
On everything.
Let's talk about the plane. You heard glass breaking. You didn't see it?
I didn't see it.
The incident with Gina. You walk into the house. There's a thin table.
I don't know.
You don't remember how a person could get out of the gate at 2-Star Island?
No, I just heard screaming and commotion.
Screams of terror or of how can I open this gate?
I don't know how to distinguish between the two.
He threatened your jobs, but did he physically threaten you?
No.
You talked about Kim Porter, how she was different.
His respect for her. They had incredible kids.
Thank you. When you set up hotel room for Mr. Combs and Ms. Porter, there was no baby oil, right?
Lotions.
You expressed caution about hotels, why you cleaned the room afterward.
Hotel staff could sell photos. Everyone wants a payday.
You sent him a photo of him and Kim Porter?
After she died, I was heartbroken for him.
You were close?
I invited him to my wedding. I didn't hear back.
At this moment, the defense objected, and everyone in the courtroom was surprised. Then they continued.
You respected him.
Yes.
What's this photo of?
Me, KK, and Mr. Combs at Teterboro Airport. He just got the jet. That's why there's champagne.
You're happy there, right?
No, refresh it. It's that I was glad I had found the mascara in the back seat.
They found you and subpoenaed you?
I had to retain counsel right away.
At this moment, the redirect began.
Which incidents shook you?
The plane with Cassie and the apples with Gina. I felt guilty. I didn't do anything after the incident with Cassie on the plane.
But you didn't see any injuries?
People can be injured without injuries being visible. Tonality and tension with the apples he threw at Gina, it was troubling.
You told Ms. Coram about both incidents?
Yes, and I told her I am unwilling to stand behind the behavior that I was quitting.
Did Christina say she would quit?
No.
How long did she stay after you told her?
Until recently.
At this moment, the government called their next witness.
We call Scott Muscuddy. What did you do for work?
I'm an actor and musician, known as Kid Cudi.
Who is this?
Cassie. We dated in 2011.
Who else was she involved with?
Sean Combs.
What did you know about their status?
That she and Sean Combs had some problems and they weren't dating anymore.
In December 2011, did law enforcement respond to your home?
Yes, I had a break-in. Cassie called me at 5:30 or 6 a.m. She said Sean Combs had found out about us. She asked me to pick her up. So I did, yeah.
Why?
She was worried.
What was her demeanor?
Very stressed and worried.
Where did you go?
The Sunset Marquee.
Why?
I thought it was safe, off the radar.
Who else did you speak with?
Capricorn Clark. She sounded near tears.
What did she say?
That Sean Combs in the car, near my house.
At this moment, the defense objected but was overruled.
You called Sean Combs?
I did. He said, I'm over here waiting for you.
When you arrived, what did the outside look like?
Pretty normal.
Any security camera?
Yes, but I found out they weren't working. But the security cameras had been moved.
Did you move them?
No.
What did you see inside your home?
Gifts were open, some stuff I got from Chanel, and my dog was locked up in the bathroom.
How did you usually leave your dog?
I let him roam.
How long had you had your dog?
3 years.
What changes were behavior of your dog after the break-in?
Jittery, on edge all the time. I got back in and called Sean Combs again. I was looking for him. I wanted to fight him, you know.
Did he answer?
Yeah, he said, I'm on my way. I thought to myself.
At this moment, the defense objected on the grounds of non-responsive and was overruled. And the judge told the prosecution to ask a new question.
When you saw Cassie, how did she seem?
Depressed.
Did you see Cassie in Connecticut?
Yes, she needed it.
Did Mr. Combs call you?
Yes, he hit me a few times.
Hit?
Called me.
What did you say?
That I didn't want to talk with him. He broke into my house, hurt my dog.
Did you and Ms. Ventura break up?
Yes.
What about your car?
My dog's babysitter called me and told me my car was on fire.
Where were you?
At a relative of my ex-girlfriend.
Where did you go?
To my house, 8925 Hollywood Hills Road.
Let me show you 6 pictures. Do you recognize?
My Porsche. That's the damage to my Porsche from the Molotov cocktail.
Who took these photos?
Chip, a good friend and collaborator.
What's depicted here?
The hole they cut in the roof of my car to put in the Molotov cocktail.
What was your reaction to your car being set on fire?
What the fuck?
At this moment, the defense objected, but was overruled.
Was the damage on your car present before the call from the dog sitter?
No.
Did you think it was accidental or intentional?
Intentional.
Where did you last see Ms. Ventura?
At the Soho House. I'd reached out to Sean Combs and said, let's talk. This is getting out of hand.
At this moment, the defense asked for a sidebar. The judge said, "Do you have an objection?" The defense said yes, and the judge said, "Sustained. Disregard and move on."
Who set up the meeting at Soho House?
D-Rock and my manager.
What was Mr. Combs doing?
Standing there like a Marvel supervillain. He said, we were homies. You know that is my girl.
What did you say?
I thought you had broken up. Then Sean Combs offered me water twice. It was weird, Sean Combs being so calm.
What did Cassie say?
That we have fallen in love, things happened.
What did you say to Mr. Combs?
What about my car? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. I walked away.
Did you see Sean Combs later?
A few years later, also at Soho House, he said, I'm just sorry for all that bullshit. I was surprised, so I found peace with it.
No further questions at this time.
I want to ask you some questions about your Porsche in 2022.
2012.
I apologize. You get a call about damage to your vehicle. Any surveillance photos?
No, my dog's babysitter did send me pictures of the damage.
The DNA taken, are you aware it came back being a female?
At this moment, the prosecution objected on the grounds of no foundation, and it was sustained.
Do you know there were DNA results?
At this moment, the judge allowed the question.
No.
Ms. Ventura told you it was over?
We just stopped talking.
You told this honorable court and this jury that she played you?
Yes.
She played you and you had no clue?
No clue.
In 2011, you went on a tour?
Yes.
65 locations?
Yeah.
At that time, Sean Combs as an icon, fair to say?
Yes.
You and Ms. Ventura had a sexual relationship.
At this moment, the prosecution objected. Then they had a sidebar, but then continued.
Mr. Steele, can I...
At this moment, the judge said, no, you can do that on redirect.
Do you want to tell me something?
Sean Combs asked about me doing a song with Ms. Ventura in 2010.
Thank you. You believe they left your front door unlocked?
Yes?
No forced entry?
No.
Just presence open, door in the bathroom. I'm not belittling, just asking. You called Sean Combs?
Yeah.
He was calm?
Yes.
You went to see him? You didn't think he had a gun?
I couldn't call it.
You are a strong person. That's how you categorize yourself?
Yeah, this crossed the line.
Ms. Ventura told you she was abused,
Yes,
but she never said she was sexually abused. True?
she did not.
You loved her? Tell me if I'm wrong.
I did.
You got played by the same person who played Mr. Combs, Cassie Ventura, in the 13 years since. Have you ever been notified in California that there has been any more action on this car fire?
No,
Did Ms. Ventura have multiple phones?
I don't remember.
35-12.
If I said it, I said it.
Do you know what a burner phone is?
Untraceable.
The trespass. You call it a break-in. Ms. Ventura told you she'd given your home address to Mr. Combs.
Yes, in the morning.
No more questions. Thanks.
No problem.
What did Ms. Ventura confide in you about abuse?
That he would hit her, sometimes kick her.
The day of the break-in, was she carefree?
No.
What did Capricorn Clark tell you?
Sean Combs and an affiliate forced her into a car to come to my house. I called the police.
How would you describe Cassie that day?
Just really shook. Him finding out about us.
Why did your relationship with Ms. Ventura end?
The drama out of hand. I wanted to give space.
What drama?
The break-in. For my safety. Her safety.
At this moment, the defense objected on the grounds of speculation, but was overruled.
Why did you have safety concerns?
Because I knew Sean Combs was violent.
At this moment, the defense asked the judge to approach, and they had a sidebar, and then they continued.
The meeting at the Soho House, Mr. Combs said, I don't know what you're talking about your car. Did you believe him?
At this moment, the defense objected, and the judge told him to rephrase the question.
What was your understanding?
That he was lying.
No further questions.
The judge asked if there was any recross, and the defense said, no, Your Honor.
What's your name?
Myla Morales. I'm a celebrity makeup artist.
Do you recognize anyone you've worked for?
Sean Combs, in the gray sweater and white collar.
When did you work for Mr. Combs?
2000 to 2005.
Then who?
Rihanna,
Who else?
Jennifer Lopez, Cassie.
When did you work with Cassie?
2007 until COVID. She was like a little sister to me.
How much older than her are you?
A few years.
Did you see her with injuries on her face?
2010 Grammy weekend. Prince party.
Where were you with her?
Beverly Hills. I fell asleep in the room and woke up to a commotion. Cassie walked in, then Sean asking, where the fuck is she?
What did he do?
walk into the bedroom, shut the door.
What did you hear behind the door?
Yelling and screaming, both of them. Then Sean Combs left.
What did you see next?
Cassie. She had a swollen eye and knots on her head. I packed her things up. We went to my house.
Then?
My doctor friend came and examined her to see if she had a concussion.
What were you afraid of?
Sean, I feared for my life.
At this moment, the defense objected and said, move to strike, and the judge overruled it.
How long did she stay?
Days.
Have you done interviews about this?
A couple.
Were you paid?
No.
Did you provide evidence?
Photos of me and Kim Porter, early 2000s.
Were you paid?
$1,000.
No further questions.
Did you assist Ms. Ventura for any red carpet events?
Possibly. And some music video, black and yellow.
We have photos. 647, please. The goal was that she looked put together?
Yes.
These photos show your artistry. You reposted them on Instagram?
Yes.
You were in her hotel room, though you lived near.
Yes.
You met Ms. Ventura's family.
Her father.
You called a doctor and a lawyer.
The lawyer lives in San Francisco.
You provided emotional support.
Yes.
You did an interview with CNN and with Extra TV, Don Lemon, Piers Morgan.
Yes.
Did Dateline reach out to you?
I don't look at those anymore.
Did you ask the government if you could do more? Look at this. So you asked permission to speak to Dateline?
Of course I asked.
After the incident, neither Mr. Combs or anyone from his company ever approached you.
No one did.
For a documentary, were you paid?
Therapy?
You sold the photos to CNN for $1,000?
Yes.
No further questions.
Frederick Zemmour, the general manager of L'Hermitage Hotel LA. Why are you here?
I received a subpoena.
Are you familiar with the hotel's reservation system?
We have a system called Opera. We enter in personal preferences.
How long do you keep them?
They stay forever.
Who reserved this room for Sean Combs?
Ryan Lopez, also other names were used.
When was this profile first created?
2006, it said Sean Combs and Bad Boy Records. Then they changed it to Jackie Star.
Let's look at 2011 to 2012. This reservation, what's the bill?
Over $2,000. It says only charge if Christina Coram approves.
What were the instructions?
Put room out of service for cleaning. Like the room hot, set it for 75 degrees.
What are these complaints?
Candle wax on carpet. Security called. Charge $500.
No further questions.
At this moment, the judge asked the defense, cross-examination, and they said, none. Then came the next witness.
Special Agent Josh Croft, where do you work?
HSI, Homeland Security Investigations. I extract data from computers.
What is your training?
The Sands Institute.
What does that stand for?
I don't really know. They are opaque in that way.
What tools do you use?
TX1 and Digital Collector.
Whose laptops did you extract?
Cassie Ventura. This is a MacBook Pro, roughly from 2010-2011, with a white case.
Did you boot it up?
I got to the MacBook factory default screen.
But you got data.
Yes, the hard drive had data not overridden by the factory reset.
What is unallocated space?
Something not viewable, something previously deleted.
Explain how computers store data.
You have a table of contents. A file can still be stored in unallocated space.
So on these 3 laptops, how are they backed up?
iTunes was used before iCloud. Some looks a little funky.
But you can validate the funky, as you say, data by going to the raw data?
Yes.
Nothing further.
On one of the laptops, there was a Frank Black profile.
Yes.
Did you process every file?
Yes.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Frank Black, did you proceed under Ms. Ventura's consent?
Under warrant.
At this moment, the judge said, no more witnesses. Jurors, I intend to release you early. Any objections? Don't read anything about the case. Go for a walk. Watch the Knicks avenge their Game 1 loss. And you must tattle. We're making great progress. All rise. And that was the end of today for the trial. What did you think about the day of witnesses? Do you think today was the day for the prosecution or the defense? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Sippers, I am still in the middle. I'm still in the middle about the testimony so far. I think it's still maybe anybody's win or loss here. I'm not quite sure. So, Scott Cudi, known professionally as Kid Cudi, took the stand and testified about his relationship with Cassie Ventura in 2011. Now, I heard through the sippers, right? It was the tea that there was a threesome that was going on between Diddy, Cassie, and Kid Cudi, and that's how they all became intertwined with each other. They're keeping it very mediocre and PG-13 in the core as far as Kid Cudi is concerned. For whatever reason, I was under the impression that they all got together in a threesome, right? Kid Cudi and Cassie liked each other a lot, and they continued the romance outside of the bedroom without Diddy. Diddy found out and didn't like that. Him and Cassie, had one of their roundabouts in, a violent way, and she fled to Kid Cudi's house. Diddy found out where she was, tracked her down, and he blew up, or allegedly had Kid Cudi's car blew up. 1 second, tea sippers, that's my door. I'm expecting a delivery. 1 second. Thank you. Okay, so, oh, um, that's what I had heard. That's what the tea was going around. So he said that Cassie told him she and Sean Combs were no longer together and that there had been problems between them. Kid Cudi described Cassie as very stressed, scared, after Combs allegedly found out about their relationship. And like I said, I heard it was because they continue freaking off without Diddy. Okay? So, according to Kid Cudi, Cassie called him around 5:30 or 6 a.m. one morning, asking to be picked up. He drove her to the Sunset Marquise Hotel, believing it would be safe, low-profile location. Shortly after, Capricorn Clark, who Cassie spoke about in her earlier testimony, someone close to Cassie called him, sounding near tears. Cudi testified that he said Sean Combs and another person had forced her into a car and were headed to his house. In response, he called the police. So Cudi called the police. Finally, someone called the police, right? When Cudi returned home later that day, he discovered his house had been broken into. He said there were open gifts, items missing, and bother, and that his dog, normally allowed to roam, had been locked in the bathroom. He also noticed that the home security camera had been physically moved and weren't recording at the time. Cudi testified that his dog's behavior changed after the incident, becoming jittery and anxious. So they probably scared his dog and threw him in the bathroom. Frustrated and angry, Cudi said that he called Combs directly and was told he's on his way. Cudi interpreted the tone as a provocation and admitted he was prepared to confront Diddy. He then described a separate incident where his Porsche was set on fire. He learned about it from his dog's babysitter, who called him and said that they saw the car on fire. When Cudi arrived, he saw the aftermath of what he described as a Molotov cocktail attack, photos of which were taken by a friend named Chip. He testified that the hole in the car roof had clearly been cut to drop the explosive inside. When asked how he reacted, Cudi said, "What the F?" And he emphasized that he believed the act was intentional. Okay. Later, Cudi recalled a meeting at Soho House with Diddy, arranged by D-Rock. Remember, Cassie mentioned D-Rock. I believe D-Rock's one of his bodyguards, security guards, and his manager. He described Diddy as calm and composed, standing there like a Marvel villain. During the meeting, Diddy reportedly told him, "We were homies. You know that's my girl." Cassie responded by saying that she and Cudi had fallen in love. Wow. Okay, so how do you get falling in love with Cudi if y'all had only had maybe prior, you know what I'm saying, one or two times together, intimate times together? Or like maybe 2, 3 few intimate. You had fallen in love with Kid Cudi from those seldom few private moments together, however you and Kid Cudi were together, allegedly without Diddy. I don't think it was because of that. I think it was because all of them were freaking in some type of a freak off together, all three of them. And that's when her and Kid Cudi believed that, well, she says they believed that they were falling in love. Okay? So anyway, Diddy offered him water twice, which Cudi found unsettling. Right, Diddy could have been trying to poison Cudi. If he may have drank that water, Cudi might not have even have been here to testify today about whatever had happened to his car. All right. When Cudi brought up the incident with his car, Combs allegedly said, "I don't know what you talk about," and walked away. Cudi said he believed Combs was lying. Okay. So, yeah, I don't see anything damning except the car bombing that Diddy denied, and that they never showed any proof of Diddy actually doing. Okay, so I don't know, people, if Kid Cudi was a damning side to Diddy, or did he just say what we all knew, that Cudi them alleged that Diddy blew up his car. Okay, so now we're gonna jump into some day 9 of some Diddy testimonies. Okay, Diddy in court. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we already know about some of the celebrities, but not all of them are like implemented in freak offs and stuff.
A lot to break down about what was happening today. We've been talking about Kid Cudi's testimony, week 2 in general. But right now I want to bring on Elizabeth Milner, our longtime reporter, who is inside that courtroom for Kid Cudi's testimony. Now, one of the things I want to ask you about, Elizabeth, is we're reading the transcript, right? We're reading what he said on the stand. What was his tone like? Because I got to tell you, he was hitting one-liner after one-liner after one-liner. By the way, shows up in court, leather jacket, smoking a cigarette. I mean, this is Kid Cudi, major celebrity comes in. What was the substance of what he was saying? And I got to ask you the tone in which he was saying it.
Well, obviously, I didn't see the cigarette smoking part. I was inside the courtroom when this was going on, but it was a packed courtroom today, Jesse, despite it being very cold outside today, despite it even pouring down raining this morning when I came to court today. A lot of people were inside that courtroom because a lot of people wanted to know, what did Scott Mescudi, aka Kid Cudi, really have to say. So when he walks inside the courtroom, to your point, Jesse, he was very, very casual. He had on a leather jacket. It was a little bedazzled. He had on a white t-shirt. He had on jeans, something that you kind of really don't see necessarily, especially in federal court. I mean, all the other witnesses have been in suits, even some of the escort witnesses, but for Kid Cudi, he just came in very casual. He just walked right to the witness stand, didn't pay Diddy any type of attention from what I could see of him, but he got onto the witness stand and swore that oath like he normally, like all the other witnesses do. And then that's when we got into the testimony. And let me just say, Jesse, there was so much testimony. I was just writing things down and down and down again because there was really so much. And we knew about kind of the Molotov cocktail incident, especially because it was laid out in Cassie's federal lawsuit, right? But just hearing Kid Cudi explain it from his own words were just a whole nother level, I could say.
So people were laughing, right? People were laughing when he was testifying because he made that one comment that he sees Sean Combs. He had a meeting with him and said he looked like a Marvel supervillain. Were people laughing?
No. Yes, people were laughing, but if you're going to ask if Diddy was laughing, it didn't seem like he found that joke necessarily funny, but there was definitely some courtroom laughter, even from some of the jurors who were in the box. They were laughing as well, too, but from what I could see of Diddy, it didn't seem like he had much laughter going on in that specific moment, which was a complete 180 from kind of his demeanor when George Kaplan was testifying, where he seemed a little more jovial. He was laughing along, but when Kid Cudi came on the stand, it felt like the smile just went down, right, and he had more of a serious demeanor and serious tone listening to Kid Cudi testify.
And because, you know, Kid Cudi was providing some quite important pieces of damning evidence against Sean Combs. I mean, talk to us about his direct examination. What were some of the highlights that you took away from his direct examination? Because the prosecution, in my opinion, I was talking about it before, they're calling him not only to corroborate, I think, the account of Cassie, but to establish some of the elements of racketeering, right? The underlying crimes of maybe kidnapping, arson. Talk to us about some of the big moments from his direct examination, and then we'll talk about what the cross-examination was like.
Right, because the jury has been hearing about Scott Mescudi a lot, and they've been referring to Kid Cudi as Scott Mescudi during this. So seeing Kid Cudi in the flesh, I'm sure a lot of people wanted to know, what did he have to say about December 2011 specifically? Now, around that time frame, police actually responded to Kid Cudi's then home. He's no longer in that home anymore now, but they responded to a call about a break-in at his home. So he said that day actually started with a call from Cassie herself about 5:30, 6:30 in the morning. And Cassie relayed to Kid Cudi that Diddy had found out that the two were dating, and she sounded kind of stressed during this phone call. So what Kid Cudi did was he picked her up. He took her to a hotel called Sunset Marquis, so that way it was a little safe for her to kind of hang out there and be at that hotel. But Kid Cudi at the time said he didn't think that Cassie was even dealing with Diddy at this point. Diddy had asked actually for Kid Cudi's address around this time, and one of the big moments was that Cassie was the one who actually gave Diddy Kid Cudi's address. And so Kid Cudi said he didn't know what Diddy was going to do.
And that's another point. Why do you guys think she gave Diddy Kid Cudi's address? He probably, you know what I'm saying, you know, got it out of her, like, you know, made her give it up. Okay, intimidated her, scared her, possibly beat her. Okay, to give him Kid Cudi's address. Because why else would she give him his address?
Then when he was at the hotel, he actually got a call, or he had spoken to Capricorn Clark, somebody that was Cassie's friend, but also somebody that had worked for Diddy. And so when Kid Cudi was speaking to Capricorn Clark, Capricorn sounded scared on this phone call, pretty much on the verge of tears, because it was Diddy, one of his affiliates, an unnamed person, and Capricorn Clark were at Kid Cudi's home. Kid Cudi was kind of describing that essentially Capricorn Clark was essentially taken by physical force to go with them to Kid Cudi's home while Kid Cudi wasn't even there. So Kid Cudi could verify that Sean Combs, aka Diddy, aka Puff Daddy, whatever we're calling him, was inside his home when he wasn't there. Kid Cudi said that he actually went home after speaking with Capricorn Clark and just kind of rushed over there. Then we see an exhibit photo of the entrance of Kid Cudi's old home. It's the home of the break-in, and you see the front gate door. And he described his neighborhood at the time being as far as being very quiet, family-oriented, and they had to kind of mention that he was driving a Porsche around that time. So Kid Cudi actually called Diddy while he was driving home, and there was some profanity here, so bear with me, everyone. He said, "Mother effer, are you in my house?" And Diddy said, "I just want to talk to you. I'm here waiting for you." And surprisingly, Kid Cudi explained that Diddy sounded relatively calm while he was on the phone speaking to him. So Kid Cudi thought his security cameras were working, and turns out he said someone kind of had moved them and angled them a little bit down, so that way I guess whatever was going on wasn't captured on that video. And they had moved them the opposite angle, and said Kid Cudi verified he wasn't the one who moved those security cameras. But when he got home, Jesse, he said gifts were open on the kitchen counter. Stuff was pretty expensive. It was from Chanel. And that his dog, surprisingly, was locked in the bathroom. Now, his dog normally roams around free like a lot of our pets normally do. I mean, my cats right now are probably wandering around. I would never lock them inside the bathroom while I'm out of home or anything like that. So I can understand why that really stood out to him as far as his dog being inside the bathroom with the door closed. But he had that dog for about a 2-year 3-year period, and noticed that after this break-in had happened, that his dog became jittery and was always on edge at the time. So Kid Cudi got back into his car, he says, and called Diddy because he wanted to fight Diddy. He wanted to square up essentially and just find him and fight him because he believed that Diddy broke into his home. And so he said after this phone call, he thought about the reality of the situation and what more could possibly escalate from that situation. So what he ended up doing is he just called the police. And when he had returned home, because remember, he was driving around looking for Diddy, essentially wanting to fight him, he says. And when he returned home, the police were there at his home. He filed a report, and then he was speaking with Cassie about the situation. And Cassie seemed pretty depressed about the situation, according to Kid Cudi while he was on the stand. And then he had said, because this was around December of 2011, and we know that shortly after that, Kid Cudi had spent the holidays with Cassie over at her family's home in Connecticut, and then they broke up shortly after. But the thing is, a few weeks later, January 9th of 2016, again, a few weeks after his break-in, his car caught on fire, or not even caught on fire. A Molotov cocktail was lodged into the driver's side of his car, of his Porsche, mind you. And we saw a lot of exhibit photos from that Molotov cocktail being inside, or not being inside that car, but we saw the aftermath of the Molotov cocktail in the car. So we saw an exhibit photo of the damaged car. You could see a cut at the top of the roof from the Molotov cocktail. The roof was blown out. Kid Cudi had said his friend Chip, who is one of his best friends, took those photos because he had got a call from his dog sitter at the time that essentially his car was on fire. So he had rushed back home to see what happened. Lo and behold, this entire incident happened. So we saw more exhibit photos of the burned driver's side door, some smoke damage, again, the hole of the roof, damage to the driver's side car, burned seats. He said when he arrived home, he did see the damage to his car, and he saw the Molotov cocktail. He saw that burnt bottle on the ground right next to the outside of his car. So he said police were actually there when he had arrived home, and his car wasn't even able to be repaired after this fire. And so they had said that this cocktail was in the driver's seat, and his reaction, to your point, Jesse, earlier about him just being so casual while he was on the stand and his one-liners, well, his one-liner for his reaction about a Molotov cocktail being lodged into his car was, "What the F?" And obviously I can't say what the F means, but we all know kind of from that. But as far as just the aftermath of it, there was this whole meeting at Soho House where essentially Diddy and Kid Cudi shook hands. Kid Cudi said that he didn't necessarily believe Diddy when Diddy had said, Kid Cudi had said something along the lines of, "What are we going to do about my car?" And Diddy said to Kid Cudi, "I don't know what you're talking about." But as we ended the redirect, because there was some cross-examination in between that essentially Kid Cudi believed Diddy was lying about this because, there were some objections thrown here and there. But he kind of snuck in there that he believed that Diddy was a violent person and was the reason behind this Molotov cocktail in his car.
Just unbelievable testimony. So as I mentioned before, it not only helps corroborate Cassandra Ventura's account, but, kidnapping, arson, these are key crimes for the racketeering statute. These are exactly what the prosecution is looking for, and you could see how Kid Cudi is filling in the pieces of that. And by the way, having Kid Cudi, a star of that, I don't know how much the jury actually knows about Kid Cudi, but having him testify, that's compelling for the prosecution. Although I will tell you, I thought it was interesting what the defense was trying to do with him under cross-examination. What were some of the highlights of cross-examination? I believe it was being conducted by Brian Steele, who, as we know, no stranger to high-profile people in the music industry. He famously represented Young Thug in his trial. What was the cross-examination about there?
Well, another time we could actually see Brian Steele in action, because so far we've only seen him cross-examine one other witness, and that being Officer Israel Flores, one of the first witnesses called in this trial. But we really got to see Brian Steele once again in action, and he has just such a different tone from some of the other defense attorneys. He's not very flashy or very showy, and I don't mean that in a bad way or anything like that. He's really just straight to the point. It doesn't seem like when he's cross-examining a witness, it's because he wants a reaction from the audience, and the audience being the gallery or any of the jurors. He really just kind of wants likes to get straight to the point with the cross-examination. And so what he was getting to under cross was that there were fingerprints taken. There was DNA collected. However, this DNA came back to a female, according to the defense. However, there was an objection. That objection was sustained, so that part will be kind of struck. And then he was kind of essentially gearing this a little bit more towards Cassie. Brian Steele had said something along the lines of, Cassie played you, and Kid Cudi responded yes. Brian Steele was asking Kid Cudi about his music career and how popular he was, especially around that time frame. And around that time frame I was still in high school, but Kid Cudi was so huge around that time frame. So I think what the defense was trying to do was possibly allude that maybe it was a deranged fan who had did this, and it wasn't necessarily Brian Steele's client at the time, or client now, that being Diddy. But then Brian Steele was kind of trying to be like, oh, you did drugs with Cassie. And Kid Cudi was like, well, we smoked some weed. And I think the defense was trying to also get in Cassie's sexual history as well, too, whether or not Kid Cudi and Cassie were intimate. However, they kept on having sidebars during this moment. And as we all know, with the sidebars, there's a lot of static noise. So we don't know what they're talking about. They kind of huddle off into a corner. They kind of go through, I guess, the arguments. The jury's still inside that courtroom, but us in the gallery and the jurors even too, we hear this just loud static noise. So I'm not sure kind of what the bottom, or what they got to as far as the bottom of just this sidebar. But Brian Steele was just essentially kind of trying to paint it as that Cassie essentially played Kid Cudi. And so when Brian Steele was cross-examining Kid Cudi just about whether or not Cassie had told Kid Cudi about sexual abuse, and Kid Cudi responded she never did. Kid Cudi surprisingly said that he was in love with Cassie.
Right.
He also said that he never saw Diddy hit her, and Diddy never interrupted Cassie and Kid Cudi when they were together. And so far from what I could see, even of the jurors, kind of while they were while Brian Steele was cross-examining Kid Cudi, the jury seemed very engaged with this testimony. I mean, they're always engaged, but you could really tell that they were super engaged about this, probably especially after seeing those exhibit photos. Then we kind of get into the Soho House meeting, and that was the meeting where Kid Cudi, Cassie, and Diddy himself all got together. They all kind of just hashed everything out, and that was surprisingly the last time Kid Cudi had seen Cassie. And so Brian Steele was asking Kid Cudi, she was living two different lives, and Kid Cudi responded yes. And so then they kind of ended the cross-examination as far as Cassie was the one who gave Mr. Combs your address, and Kid Cudi responded yes. So those were some of the biggest highlights of the cross-examination. Obviously, I took a whole bunch of notes so I could really get into the weeds of it, but I know for time and everything like that, I can't say everything right now.
Well, you do provide such incredible detail, and we appreciate it because there are no cameras in there, but I know you have to head back into court. Look, it seemed to me that they were really trying to assassinate Cassandra Ventura's character, questioning her motives, questioning if she's manipulative of both Kid Cudi and Sean Combs, the burner phones, things of that nature. So a lot more to discuss. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much. I know you have to head into court. Great reporting as always.
Thanks, Jesse.
Now, we're going to continue the conversation in a minute, but before we hit a quick break, I got to tell you, when you listen to this P. Diddy trial and you're hearing the arguments from both sides, I got to say, for me, it seems to make sense. It seems to remind me about how important having a great lawyer matters. And that's why I want to bring up real quick our sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, who helps make this show possible. If you don't know who they are America's...
All right, more explosive testimony from Kid Cudi. However, explosive for who? Is it explosive for the prosecution? Or is it explosive for Diddy? I don't know, guys. Like, we knew about the car bombing, right? We knew about the car bombing. Okay.
I did understand that there was kind of like a sex...
to go into what Diddy had going on. So, I mean, it's interesting at most, like, of like a very freaky R-rated X novel. But there's lots to get into. Baby oil X costumes, the strippers, the Punisher, lots of stuff to get into.
In Combs' trial,
I did understand that there was
We are
a
going to send some
kind of
tea
like a
now
sexy
from
scene, as I
Lauren
described.
Prime and Jeanette. Okay, it's going to break down some of the understandings of what they've pulled out of the Diddy trial so far. We're on day 9. Okay, Kid Cudi's testified. And agents that raided his house testified they found Astroglide and baby oil. I mean, at most, it's like they, raided a Orange Star's house, an ex-worker's house or some shit. I don't know necessarily about this drug kingpin and trafficker and all of that just quite yet. I hear that they've let people see the some of the X tapes, so maybe some things will leak out and we'll know more. But right now, from what we're being ran out of the courtroom because they're not allowing any cameras, I just don't necessarily see them convicting Diddy on a RICO. Okay, let's tap into Crime Fix right now. We're gonna pay some homage to Anjanette Levy. And we follow her because she keeps us up to date with stuff that's going on as well in other cases that we review. So thank you guys for sipping tea with Tanisha. When you come into Tanisha's tea room, please remember to like and subscribe when you fill up your cup. Let's get it.
In my testimony that wanted to be created.
Sheree Hayes, the former stripper known as Punisher, is telling all about his time with Cassie Ventura and Sean Combs during freak-offs. Do you have any regrets? And Hayes tells me what it was like to testify in Combs' trial.
Ooh, so Miss Anjanette is interviewing the Punisher, y'all. Now, we didn't see, I know other YouTubers got pictures and stuff, but I didn't go and take their pictures. And I was hoping somebody would run an interview through here, and they did. So we're going to catch it right quick and fill our teacups up. Y'all make sure y'all got y'all teacups up, okay, to catch some of this tea, okay? Mrs. Levy is interviewing the Punisher. Baby oil, X, and costumes, y'all. He had costumes, y'all.
Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Sheree Hayes, the Punisher, took center stage at Sean Combs' sex trafficking trial this week. He used the name Punisher while working as an exotic dancer. And back in 2012, he got a call from a woman who used the name Janet, and that would lead to him being called as a witness in this trial. Janet, Hayes said, was actually Cassie Ventura, and she claimed that her husband had wanted her to hire a dancer for her and her friends for her birthday. Hayes told the jury when he arrived at the Trump Hotel on Central Park West that night, he went to the room, and a woman wearing only a bathrobe and a wig was in the bathroom. Hayes said the woman told him that she and her husband wanted him to help them create a sexy scene with baby oil. And there was a lot of baby oil involved, let me tell you. Hayes obliged. Janet, after all, was a beautiful woman. He would tell the jury he didn't know who these people were at first, but months later, he would discover it was Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura. Combs, Hayes said, would direct Ventura in these sexual encounters as Combs watched, sometimes masturbating, appearing with a bottle of lubricant in his hand. As far as Hayes could tell, this appeared to be consensual, but Cassie Ventura had told the jury earlier in the trial that she was open to this activity, the freak-offs, at first, but then later, she felt she had no choice but to participate. Combs is on trial charged with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation for purposes of prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty to all of these charges, and his attorneys have said what went on between him and Cassie Ventura was domestic violence, not sex trafficking, and they say he is not a racketeer. It will be up to the jury to decide whether or not that is true.
So joining me now is Sheree Hayes, the man who was one of the witnesses here in Sean Combs' trial. Thanks so much for joining me, Sheree. First of all, how are you feeling after testifying in this trial that the world is literally watching, not on television, but everybody's following along in this trial and seeing your name?
Well, at this point, I'm definitely relieved from the pressure associated with testifying. It was very nerve wracking. So much weight, so much is at stake, and kind of being in the middle where my testimony can kind of sway it to either direction. It was a difficult space to be in. But I'm pleased with my testimony in terms of it just being truthful and accurate based on what I could recall. So after it's all done, I'm actually at peace and in a pretty good space.
Take me back to when you first, were in touch with members of the prosecution team, the government. I mean, how did you get in touch with them? Was this after the raid on Sean Combs's properties and, they asked for people who had information to come forward? How did this come about?
Literally, I was just home one day, and this was probably sometime between March and May. I know it was spring time. And I just got a call from my doorman saying, you have a guest in the lobby. And I showed up and it was, hey, can we talk to you? And I had no idea what it's for. So I wanted to have the conversation right in the lobby. And they were like, was in reference to Mr. Sean Combs. And I was like, yeah, come upstairs. And they just kind of said, hey, look, we got your name as far as being a participant in this scenario. And honestly, me personally, I didn't think my testimony or my role in it was significant. I didn't have a full understanding, I guess, from the legal aspect of trafficking and the accusations that they said they were investigating. But I didn't think my participation applied to any of the charges.
Our content really shows how important personal safety is, and that's especially true when it comes to protecting your privacy online. You would be shocked at how much of your personal information is out there, like your address and phone number. Ever wonder why you get so many spam calls and emails? That's because this
last year.
Yeah, this was sometime between March and May of last year.
Between March and May of last year. So they got your name somehow, whether it was from Casa Ventura, the phones, some way, and they come to you and they ask you about all of this. Were these Homeland Security agents, or do you know who they were?
Yeah, it was just a Homeland Security agent, and he was chaperoned by like a regular NYPD officer.
Mm. So you sit down and talk to them. I'm assuming give a statement.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly at the time, I really strongly, I guess, in my legal evaluation, thought I was insignificant. So I kind of gave them like a lighthearted recount of what I could remember at the time. And it was similar to my testimony, probably more summarized. I just said, hey, I've seen them about this amount of times. This is how it was. I kind of reenacted the scenario similar to my court testimony. And I really did not expect to hear from them again in regards to that.
So when did you find out that the government indeed wanted you to testify, to take the stand?
Probably just literally a couple of months ago. Everything was kind of presented to me as, we're just interviewing tons of people, we're just doing our due diligence. So after hearing from them in May, I think the next time I got any type of interaction was in December. And December was what I was told was still not that I was going to possibly testify. It was at the time where they said they may have been turning over the witness list to the people they spoke to the defense. So they said, hey, we just letting you know we're turning these names over to the defense. So it can put you in a scenario where you're contacted, whatever. And I was like, okay, fine, no problem whatsoever. But then they gave me the option of, did I need help with getting an attorney? And I'm like, getting an attorney? Why would I need an attorney? And that was kind of like the first cue that I may be considered as a witness.
So did you get an attorney?
Yes, I did. So I refused it at that time because I still was in denial, like my testimony, probably won't be significant. And then once we got to about, I want to say April, they reached back out and I was like, oh, wow, this is real. And I asked for help with securing an attorney.
Wow. So let's go back to 2012 now. I mean, we're going back quite a few years. You got the call from the woman who identified herself as Janet. You show up, you said at Trump Tower, you testified to this. The woman then tells you, hey, this is not what I said it was. This is not hanging out with me and my girlfriends for my birthday and putting on a show, and she tells you what's going on. I mean, that you said in your testimony, this is something that this was not part of your normal work routine. I mean, you were somebody who would go to parties and have fun with grandmas and aunts and bachelorette parties. And I mean, this is not your usual game. So what made you kind of agree to take part in this?
Me being as honest as possible, just physical attraction and the initial scenario of it. I mean, Miss Ventura is a gorgeous, gorgeous woman. So, opening the door to a woman as beautiful as her, actually in a role that gives indication that she's nude, I'm like, wow, what's this? And again, me coming in, and then what she explained to me she was interested in, and the amount of money she gave me initially, it just seemed like a win-win for somebody in my occupation trying to make some extra money on the side.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, $800, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I mean, even now, 13 years later, I mean, that's a lot of money.
With me initially quoting $200.
Yes.
And yeah, it's 4 times what I asked for. And that's just initial, literally nothing happened through the door. It's just here, this is for you. So it was a very tempting scenario in terms of, that being presented to me the way it was with her beauty and the amount of money. It was like, how do I turn this down?
Yeah, most definitely. So, some time passes and then you figure out finally what's going on here, or who these people are. You kind of talked about being at the Essex house, and you said you said in your testimony there was usually some downtime.
Yeah, so
prep time or whatever. And talk to me about how you realized it was Sean Combs.
Literally, sometimes it'll say, hey, show up at 2 a.m., but they may not be ready to interact for literally a couple of hours. So on this specific occasion, I was put into an extra bedroom in the suite. And to kill time, I figured I'd watch TV, and the hotel happened to have a welcome message. So as I cut on the TV, it just said Essex House would like to welcome Mr. Sean Combs. And it was kind of like a wow. Like I literally had no clue. That's who I was interacting with. And this was a period of time after the first time. It might have been as much as a year into these interactions. So I honestly felt like a dunce. I followed Mr. Combs on Instagram. I actively checked his page every now and then, and I never put it together.
Wow. When did you discover, how long after that did you discover that Cassie Ventura, you said you followed him on social media, and you figured out that Cassie Ventura was the woman that you were engaging in these sexual activities with?
That was almost immediately the same scenario with Essex House, because she was actively posted in photos with him on his page. And so, like I said, I was spiraling past his page, but I guess I didn't come across any of the ones with them together while I was unaware. So, but it was pretty clear once I saw his name on a TV screen.
So you had between 8 and 12 encounters with them. It was always the same, it sounds like, from what you said, the baby oil. Did that ever strike you as kind of, different? Or, I mean, you described it as you thought this was like a fetish type thing, and that drew an objection. I mean, were you kind of like at first, did you ever after leaving this, you're like, wow, this is some good money I'm making. This is extra money I'm making. But were you ever like, wow, this is pretty, wild. What's going on here? These people are really into this whole baby oil thing. And the guy kind of saying, okay, move the candle here and do this and do that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a consistent place of discomfort for me. I won't say it was necessarily centered around the details of the baby oil and stuff, because I did understand that there was a kind of like a sexy scene, as I described it in my testimony, that wanted to be created. So if that was the visual he liked, I didn't see it completely off. But it was just in general for me, it was outside of my comfort zone in terms of just being in this environment with a woman that's partnered, her partner's watching, and actually actively participating in terms of directing, turn your body this way, move the candle this way. It just wasn't a place of comfort where I could get truly in an intimate space.
Yeah, I would think that would be uncomfortable. You described one interaction in particular where Cassie Ventura seemed a little startled. And you said that Sean Combs threw money down on the bed and she seemed a little bit startled. And he said, like, no, I like this SH, you know what the rest of the word is. What was that like? I mean, that it sounds like that was the only time money ever came from him. You testified she always handled the cash and setting up these transactions.
Exactly. I mean, that situation, obviously, prior to that point, Mr. Combs really kept a distance from our interactions. He would always be literally as much as 10 feet away in a corner, and he would kind of, from like a voyeur scenario. This was one of the few times where he actually was in close proximity. So just my experience, and I guess in terms of with me, even him being close in the area was out of the ordinary. So when I guess he threw the cash on the bed, which was actually in a space of approval, right? He said he was enjoying what he saw. It just was so far out of the ordinary. We both reacted, like startle response. And then she was always had awareness.
Okay, now I believe Sippers, he just stated that Diddy put the money on the bed as he came closer. He was enjoying what he was watching the Punisher do to Cassie. Okay, I believe that's what I heard him say.
Cash on the bed, which was actually, and this was one of the few times where he actually was in close proximity. So just my experience, and I guess in terms of with me, even him being close in the area was out of the ordinary. So when I guess he threw the cash on the bed, which was actually
put the cash on the bed. I wonder if the prosecution's going to pick up on that and try to make a play on that and say Diddy was soliciting for sex and that he trafficked the Punisher across whatever, however he was brought into the picture, and that's the transportation of a prostitute.
In a space of approval, right? He said he was enjoying what he saw. It just was so far out of the ordinary. We both reacted, like startle response. And then she was always had awareness in terms of him and his being attentive to him. She immediately checked in, hey, are you okay? Everything is fine, which he assured that he was. He just was enjoying, I guess, whatever the activity he was viewing.
A big part of the government's case here is that, Cassie Ventura is a victim of sex trafficking, that she was under duress, that she was coerced to take part in this. And so it seemed like on cross-examination, Xavier Donaldson was getting at the fact that you were under the impression that she seemed to, at least in the one interaction you described, she seemed to be enjoying herself. The prosecution kind of asked you that question as well. You never saw violence, you said, never heard any violence when they would leave the rooms after the interactions. Did you ever see anything that caused you concern for her when you entered these rooms for these encounters?
I did not. The circumstances were very routine and methodical. I've rarely seen any of the interactions firsthand between her and Mr. Combs. Like I said, the majority of the time he was across the room. They did have moments where he would leave the room and she would follow him out, but upon returning, things seemed normal as before. So I had no cues that she could possibly be under duress with the circumstances.
And I know that Meredith Foster asked you about, there were times where Cassie Ventura would wince or sigh, I think were the words you used, when Sean Combs would give the instructions. I mean, did the wincing and sighing, could you elaborate on that a little more? I mean, what was your impression of that?
Yeah, so the wincing and sighing was to the specific directions, but my honest assessment of it was some of the directions were very specific. Move this to the right, move this to the left, and they can come repetitively to kind of get the perfect scene, the perfect angle. And I viewed it at that time as just frustration. We're in a sexual and trying to create a sexual connection scene, and then there's these kind of minuscule instructions to do it a specific way. So I saw it as frustration. Again, that's in the moment. In hindsight, I'm sure that there could have been a possibility that the distress was, or what I viewed could have came from a different motivation or a different experience that she was having, but I did not read it that way in the moment.
Mm-hmm. It did seem like in your testimony, and I'm not going to use the language Sean Combs used, he was very graphic, but from what you recounted, that he was the guy in charge. I mean, he was saying to you at one point, he, I guess, threw some condoms on the couch. And then he said, now I want you to, do this. So he was the guy, did it feel like at the time in your recollection that he was running the show?
Based on how I viewed it, and I stayed. When I first got there, my very first encounter, it was explained to me that this was a scene or a sexual fantasy that was trying to be created. So I always, in all my experiences, understood that I was to participate with Miss Ventura to create this scene. So I knew it was for his pleasure in terms of it being aggressive or any energy outside of consensual between him and his partner. I did not get a read on that.
So you did not feel he was aggressive?
I did not. It was, even in that moment, it was more assertive. And it was assertive. It was him asking for what he wanted, but not an aggression that I thought could be fearful or to create fear.
And it sounded like you and Cassie Ventura, you guys would like engage in chit chat. It was like, oh, hey, good to see you again. How's work? Da 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 da. That kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a pleasant, personable exchange every time I showed up. She would obviously remember my work situation, ask me about work, ask me how things are going. We'd have a small conversation. So it was very cordial and natural.
So Sean Combs, you walk into the courtroom to testify. He's a powerful guy. Still, in his situation that he's in now, he's a powerful man. When you walk in, you put your hand up and swear to tell the truth, and you sit down in that chair, did you look at him at all? Did you make any eye contact with him?
Honestly, I was doing the opposite. I was trying to avoid it. What I wanted to do coming in there, I understand his position, very powerful person. There is a scenario where they say they didn't give him bail because of the possibility of him maybe intimidating people and stuff. So of course that was a concern or a worry that I considered. But at the same time, I'm compelled to tell the truth, right? I have to tell the truth. I have to give my recount of what I remember. And what I just wanted to do was do it in a fair, with no bias, and just give the circumstances that I was a part of. And I think it was kind of comforting, if I'm being honest with him myself, knowing that I did not see any abuse, any aggressive behavior or anything that I can really align with and testify. I was hoping that just that truth would be honored and just as a place of integrity, and he didn't view it as a personal attack or a discredit in any way to anybody involved.
You testified that these encounters ended, and this is something you've spoken openly about. You wrote a book about it, that you had trouble performing, that there was some anxiety. surrounding that, and that you had some issues, with erectile dysfunction. So let's touch on first how, the encounters ended. You said they didn't call you again because there was a time where you couldn't kind of complete the job.
Yeah, well, that's my assumption. That's not confirmed by them, but
Sure.
Specifically the last time we interacted, that was the similar situation with the throwing of the condoms. So there was a direct desire to see penetrative sex, and I guess it being out of the norm, him asking, directly, I got some anxiety and I could not perform. And that was coupled with the fact that it had been quite a few months since I had been called by them. And during that time, I had like an injury to my arm. I couldn't work out. So I also felt like maybe I didn't show up in the similar physical condition, at my best. So these were interpretations that I created that, hey, this could possibly be the last time maybe I'm getting fired per se. And it ended up being accurate. So it was, I guess, a good prediction.
And you wrote a book about this. You called it Freezer Meat. So talk to me about why you decided to write a book about it. And it obviously came up because you wrote about this couple, this married couple, in your book without naming them. You wrote it in 2022. But why did you write the book?
Yeah, so the full name is In Search of Freezer Meat. And when I was going through I went through a tough time, to a bad breakup where I became completely incapable of having sex. I could not get an erection for almost a year. And I went to multiple doctors and stuff to try to find out what was going on. And I found out it was not anything wrong with me physically. And it was all a mental scenario. We're further looking into it. 50% of cases of ED are all mental. Men are physically fine, and it comes from anxiety. So the reason why I spoke about their story specifically was that circumstance specifically made me unable to use erection pills at all. Prior to the situation, I could pop a Cialis and be fine, but there was so much pressure. My way of performing was, if one pill didn't work, then I would take two. Then I would take three. And I was really taking some absurd amounts of pills, thinking more medication was going to correct the situation. And I realized that if you have anxiety, it creates a hormone, cortisol, restricts your blood vessels. And I don't care how many pills you take, it's not going to work. So I referenced their story, not for the details of their story. I used it as a circumstance where.
So this is the book that Sheree Punisher Hayes wrote, In Search of Freezer Meat, a story of the male mental health crisis caused by erectile dysfunction and the only true cure no one is talking about, a anus implant. Okay. Based on a true struggle. Okay, I can't read the little bubbles, y'all. They're way too little, but yeah, that's what that does. Y'all going over and read In Search of Freezer Meat if you feel the want or desire to.
I tell a story about my life, the effects of it, and it gives some sort of medical understanding to why other people could be having a problem. So that's really the basis of my book. It's a bunch of personal stories that are connected to medical causes, issues, solutions that have to do with men struggling with erectile dysfunction, and more so psychologically, that there's just, millions of men trying to fix a mental problem with a physical remedy. Everybody's popping pills, testosterone boosters, and these things, and very well it may just be shame and a confidence issue that could actually be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case,
up here.
And in my case, I did the extreme, because to correct my mental issue, I went as far as getting a penis implant, which I don't regret, but that's for 70-year-old men. I'm getting an implant at 47 years old because I was so far gone from the anxiety or whatever. I could not function. And, I'm happy with my decision, but I realized that it's a real low place. You feel emasculated. You feel a shell of yourself. as I told my story, it's like every other guy I spoke to in my age range was having a similar experience. So I just wanted to create a tool that I could have used myself going through this issue that maybe men can read, identify, relate, and get motivated to fix whatever issue they may be going through. Because it's affecting men personally, it's affecting marriages. We all know a married couple that sleep in a separate room and they haven't had sex in 2 years. These things are way too common in our society. So I was just trying to make a self-help book and help men out. And obviously that story, the details of it contributed to giving a cause and effect of anxiety.
Just finally, the cross-examination, how did you feel? I'm reading a transcript. So when you're up there and you're being questioned by Xavier Donaldson, and he starts off by, congratulating you on your book. Did you think he was being snarky, or how did you feel he was, how did you take that?
Believe it or not, the opposite. I would, when you're preparing for cross-examination, you think somebody's going to try to rip you apart. I'm expecting aggression. I'm expecting to try to make me seem incredible, right? To take away my credibility. And I know you can't get the energy reading it, but it actually seems sincere. He actually said something similar in closing. He said, Mr. Hayes, I wish you the best. I wish you the best with your book. And I think what I felt from his from his cross-examination and dealing with me, I'm being honest. Like, he has all the notes. He has the notes. He knows everything that I said for months. And I stuck to my consistency of my truth, my recollection. I didn't deviate that in a way, at least I felt, that was biased to either side. And I think that's why I didn't get the venomous attack that you would expect in this type of trial.
Yeah, and he tried to imply that you had feelings for Cassie Ventura, and you kind of quickly corrected him and said that's not correct.
Yeah, I think we kind of cleared it up as testimony went on. I think what the misconception was I did feel special. My understanding, I believed what I was told in the beginning. So I believed they were a married couple, even when I found out who they were. But I thought this was a nuanced thing. Like, them hiring me, I thought I was the only guy. And I thought, listen, out of all the men that she could have do this and they can have this experience with, I'm the guy. And this is really what I thought. So I guess it got confused with me feeling special about being the person chosen collectively by her and also by Mr. Combs, that was romantic feelings that I had for her. And that was not the case. That's why that's why I said in testimony, I believe that's out of context.
And, what's it like now to see your name all over the place? And it obviously your legal name is not the name you see in the headlines, but we see Punisher, in all of the headlines. Has this been pretty surreal?
Yeah, it's way more than I could have ever imagined. And I have not really processed the meaning of it yet, because it's difficult. We're not exactly if everybody was like you, where you're going to assess it based on the facts, you're going to get the testimony, you're going to see everything, then this would be easier. But this is a place where ideology rules. Somebody can have a strong opinion, and that strong opinion becomes fact. So in a scenario, I've been a male stripper for 30 years. And in this testimony, I might as well have been a male escort for 30 years. So it's just really how it plays out in the big picture of how I'm viewed. And I'm still assessing that and processing that. A lot of negative feedback, a small portion of positive, but, it goes with the territory. I didn't really have a choice, and I just have to manage it the best I can.
Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts is I'm grateful for the opportunity to present myself in a way different than just the Punisher, the male escort / stripper, because that just pigeonholes you into kind of a perspective. So I appreciate you offering this platform where I can present myself in a way where maybe people can see a different light and have a different opinion of me, even though my unfortunate participation in that trial.
Do you have any regrets about ultimately saying yes to that first the sexy scene, or what Sean Combs calls a freak off?
It's funny you say that. Literally, at that point, I was 40 years old, and I barely did house parties. So if I got calls for them, I would refer them out to other guys. And I was texting that, I was putting that information in to send to another guy to do the party. And once I heard Trump Tower, I was like, oh wow, it's a fancy hotel. Maybe they'll tip a lot. I kept it. I was this close to not even being involved. So yeah, there's some regret. I'm going to manage this the best way I can, but the best possibility would have been to not be involved at all. And the biggest regret is I know it's the allegations and there's no actual verdict in the case. But if this was a scenario where Miss Ventura was under distress and forced to do these type of acts, it's something I feel terrible about, even unknowingly participating in any regard. That's something that sticks with me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure. Sheree Hayes, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Oh.
All right, y'all. We have got some questions in the chat that I have asked the tea sippers. Let's go ahead and see how we feel about testimonies and interviews. Where are the freak off people that were drugged and coerced in the drug-fueled orgies they have eluded us to believe about Diddy? All while before Diddy has come up to trial, we were being made to believe that there are drug-induced orgies going on and people all drugged up on IVs for 3-4 days. Not saying that may not come out. It hasn't came up yet. The Punisher was a guy that was hired by Cassie and Diddy, assumingly paid by them to be their private escort and dancer. And while Diddy sat back and watched, why do you think no one has mentioned any gay narratives about Diddy now as they were before the trial? Like, everybody was like, oh, Diddy was with men and all these men and every man. And oh my God. He was with the guy that was with Nicki Minaj. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Okay, him, right? And allegedly other men. I haven't heard one gay allegation come up in the Diddy trial as of yet. Okay. Why do you guys think Diddy never joined in these sessions with the Punisher? The Punisher only speaks to Diddy ever being in the room or filming from another room or something of the sort, but never joined, except one time he walked up the Punisher set and threw money on the bed and maybe, began to touch himself intimately or sexually or whatever. But we didn't hear about Diddy joining right this moment. Drop your tea in the chat. Let me know how y'all feel about all of that, okay? So we're going to run it up. It's Diddy Day 9. Who else is dropping some sweet tea on Diddy? I mean, everybody's like, oh, the baby oil, the sex, this, that. But it wasn't the way he described it, it wasn't anything that was like outrageously, extraordinary, kinky, or BDSM-ly or anything. I mean, if he had him put a little mask on or wear some type of a cape or costume or something, what was he, a fireman or something, or whatever, George of the Jungle, so what? Like, okay. Y'all finna put Diddy away for a RICO case? A RICO on the grounds of that? Like, we all better get under the bed, but not for nothing. Let me see. What tea are they dropping on law and crime? Like to dabble in a little law and crime. I don't really see anything. So hold your horses, keep your teacups up, because I'm going to be filling them up with some more tea. Let's go ahead and see if episode 3 is dropped of United States versus Diddy, compliments of TMC. You know, we watch those. They air every Thursday. We review those together here. Okay. Let's see. Do they have a new episode of it? I did see something about Diddy downfall. Episode 4, show 4, something of the sort. But maybe one I might want to have to check out. I was thinking about reviewing the Wendy Williams Trapped with y'all. I might possibly do that. Okay. That's one we saw already. Trying to see if the new one aired. Not yet. So I don't know what time it comes on. What time does it come on? So while we're waiting on that, like I said, we may watch it tomorrow. Yeah. I don't really see. Hold on, guys. Let me take this call from my dad. Please give me. That was Grandpa calling saying how cute my baby was for her graduation. So, the feds discovered something insane inside Diddy's house, says TMZ.
Today on TMZ.
Okay, well, one thing we have finally figured out is Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are not going bareback.
So Travis Kelce went shirtless and showed off his very hairy back. This is unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. If you are dating a billionaire. Hoity area of Los Angeles, Holmby Hills. What are they going to do with it? Because Q used to throw all these massive parties there and everything.
Can you just do events and parties at this house? Ooh, can you rent it out for us?
Our next holiday party is in the grotto, baby.
We all have to come dressed appropriate for the Playboy Mansion.
It would be insulting for us not.
It would be.
Yes, holiday party pants optional.
Whatever it is, I don't.
A lot of people ask me why do I like auto wash.
The biggest reason is everything's touchless.
When you wash the car as often as I do,
The touch-free options allow me to protect the investment that I've made into my vehicle.
And really the only question is, why not choose auto wash?
Warning, this content is not for the faint of heart. What follows is the verbatim testimony and evidence presented by Cassie Ventura in federal court, recorded on the 5th day of the trial of Sean Diddy Combs.
Okay, well,
some details may shock you.
So, let's see if Celebrity Gossip has anything current. Anything current on Diddy. Anything current. Nope. Okay, we're just sipping tea on Diddy Day 9. Kid Cudi testified. Like I said, I didn't hear anything other than I knew of the car bombing. I guess they're trying to use that, you know what I'm saying, as whatever, wherever they're trying to put that into the, I don't know, racketeer, I don't know. Arson. Oh, I get arson or something of the sort. Have they proved that Diddy blew up the car? Have they proved that? So let's look at law and crime sidebar. If not, we're going to be done with day 9 of Diddy. Okay, law and crime sidebar. Let's see what they may have tea on Diddy about. Updated today. Yeah, we've heard the interview of the Punisher. Like I said, it just sounded like a sweet rendezvous between Cassie and Diddy, and Diddy was the lone, wolf in the corner, and he just watched Cassie and the Punisher do the nasty. Okay, if y'all say so. Okay, I don't know. Let's see. Let's listen to this one. Kid Cudi, while P. Diddy trial testimony leaves courtroom laughing.
Joined right now by civil trial attorney David Ring, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Safa Robinson Ferrer, and also Matt Murphy, criminal defense attorney, who's...
We found some tea, y'all. Of course we did. Let's see what this leaves us feeling, okay? How would this tea leave us, okay? So far, nothing to a... Okay, I must admit, Cassie's testimony was moving. It was kind of riveting in the sense of what, she testified that her and Diddy were doing in these freak-offs. Her being the young age that she is, that's a lot, okay? Other than that, I haven't really heard too much more close to what we thought we would hear. But we're up to only day 9. Let's listen in now and sip the tea from Law and Crime. Kid Cudi's wild testimony leaves courtroom laughing.
With me right now as well, former prosecutor as well. Great to have you all here. Matt, I'll start with you. Got to ask you about Kid Cudi. Did he help the prosecution as much as I think he helped the prosecution?
Well, he's a very compelling witness. And as we were talking about off camera, have you ever seen somebody walk into a courtroom with more poise and coolness?
No.
I mean, ever. Smoking a cigarette, leather jacket, the whole deal. But each one of these witnesses, it's almost creating like an insurmountable mountain of evidence against Sean Diddy Combs.
We got a bunch of questions coming in about this, obviously. So, David, this is from D Princess. Excuse me. Do you think Capricorn Clark, Diddy's assistant that was with him the night of Kid Cudi's burglary and car fire, will she take the stand?
She should. She's a very important witness. And in fact, that was a key part of Kid Cudi's testimony, was that Capricorn Clark, who obviously was an employee of Combs, that she was basically forced to ride in the car with him to Kid Cudi's house, and then calls Kid Cudi and says, hey, Combs and some others are at your house. They're inside your house right now, and I'm really scared. So why is that super important, separate and apart from the fact he, throws a Molotov cocktail in the Porsche? Because basically that's a charge of almost kidnapping. And that's a really important part of the RICO charge. So I think it'd be important to call her, and I would suspect we see her.
Got a question for you, Safa. This is from Shop Girl. Jesse, do you think without video surveillance or Cudi seeing them blow up the car that it's just hearsay? What do you think? I'll throw it to you, Safa.
Not necessarily. What people often don't realize is that testimony is evidence. And if somebody is testifying, what they testify to, a jury can use that to determine guilt or innocence. Not only that, but we have the exhibits that were moved in under Mr. and Ms. Cudi, which show and corroborate the arson taking place, the nature of the relationship he had with Ms. Ventura, and the interestingly semi-tumultuous relationship he had with Mr. Combs, and ultimately what became of that. So it's not necessarily hearsay. His testimony is evidence. The judge is going to instruct the jury on that and indicate to them that if they do find him credible, they can certainly consider his testimony and ultimately either come back with a guilty verdict or a not guilty verdict.
We got a question from Melissa Budas. It's not a question. Oh, Jesse, you have to give us AI video of the Cudi testimony. I'll tell you what, we probably will. So we're doing this thing up on Long Crumb's YouTube. We're taking the transcripts and we're using AI to make visual recreations of what the testimony might have been like. I think it's important to get that visual aspect of it. Obviously, there's no cameras, there's no audio equipment. So there's one thing just to see the transcript and read it versus another thing hearing it. And we're trying to do it for the most important pieces or some of the more memorable pieces of testimony from this case. We did it for opening statements. We did it for Cassandra Ventura's testimony. I have a feeling we'll probably do it for Kid Cudi's testimony. Okay, going to you, Matt. Got a question from Mbasa Naebi. Hi, Jesse. Mbasa from South Africa. Hi, thanks so much for tuning in all the way over there. If Sean Combs is convicted, how many times can he appeal his conviction? Is there a limit?
Not really. The short answer is not really. There are, after the direct appeal goes through the local circuit court, it theoretically could go all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And then there's an entire thing known as the habeas process, where outside evidence that was not admitted or was not discovered at the time of the original trial can then be used to challenge the conviction or various counts that he may be convicted of. So what does that mean? That means essentially that if you have the funding to do it, it's almost unlimited.
I have another follow-up question for you about that from the same viewer. But before I do, I mentioned that as soon as court comes back, we're going to give you real-time updates. We have a court update. So prosecutor Maureen Comey says they want to put an exhibit showing Miss Ventura scantily clad. We think it plays into a stereotype that if she dresses like this, she must have consented to the freak-offs. That is an interesting observation or interesting argument or maybe allegation put forward by the prosecutor here. David, let me throw that to you. What do you make of that?
What's the relevance of introducing a photo of Cassie in some sort of like a scantily clad outfit? I mean, truly, that's victim blaming. There's no purpose for it. And I agree with the prosecution. They're just trying to undermine her credibility and portray her to be, someone who sleeps around with a lot of people and not to be believed. So I think I can't see any reason why that would be admitted.
So David, I'll just throw that back, that you heard from the cross-examination of Kid Cudi where they were trying to suggest, Kid Cudi, she played you, huh? She played Sean Combs. She had burner phones, right? They're putting a lot of the emphasis on her. And I wonder what the argument is. Is it just to suggest that she can't be believed, that, she comes out these years later, says that she's a victim of sex trafficking, filed a lawsuit against Sean Combs? Do you think there's any ground to that? Do you see where they might be going?
Well, look, the defense wants to do everything they possibly can to undermine the credibility of Cassie Ventura. And so any chance they get, they're going to try to attack her, undermine her credibility, portray her to be manipulative, and that she was in this with Sean Combs and she did this to other people. So that's their defense. They've got to. She was such a powerful witness. They've got to do everything they can to try to undermine her credibility.
Got another update from court. The judge says, I only have the album cover. The Combs defense attorney, Anna Esteveo, We can bring it up on the screen, and then she does, but for the public gallery, by the way, the jury's not present. We've withdrawn some of the exhibits. It's rather about her career opportunities and the like. Safa, let me throw you into the mix. What interesting response.
Most definitely. And I think what the defense is trying to do here is basically show that despite her relationship ending with Mr. Combs, her career went on. She still had other employment opportunities. She was a very well notable singer, and that she was known all across the country and the world. And that her ending of the relationship with Mr. Combs did not stop that from occurring, did not stop her career, which will negate his power and control over her and over her career, which would blast the prosecution's theory that she was essentially a victim, that he controlled her every move with respect to, her personal life and her professional life. And that's what the defense is trying to go at there.
By the way, one of the things that we do during this lunchtime show is we not only take your questions, we not only take what's happening in real time and break it down, but we also put up polls. We put up a poll right now. Do you believe Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car? Matt, 91% say yes, 9% say no. What do you make of that stat?
Well, I think it probably reflects exactly what the jury is thinking, too. I think that's very persuasive evidence. And remember, Jesse, this is one of the predicate acts for the RICO violation. So arson is one of the allegations. And remember, they only have to establish 2 of those over the course of a 10-year period of time. So it's a very broad net. 2 of those predicate acts, and if they can establish the enterprise element, that's all they need for the RICO.
Can I get really, really legally specific here?
Sure.
Is it they have to prove he committed them? Or for purposes of racketeering conspiracy, there was a conspiracy to attempt to commit those crimes?
It can be anybody essentially involved in the conspiracy doing that. It does not have to be Sean Combs himself, which is an important distinction to make.
Do you think they have the criminal agreement aspect of racketeering proven?
That's one of the most interesting parts about this for me. RICO violations, remember, this was designed essentially for mafia type things, where you have a criminal organization or enterprise for profit. And the enterprise here, of course, would be Bad Boy Records. And the defense ultimately is going to argue here, none of this advances the actual enterprise, which is Bad Boy Records. So they're going to argue that it fails to establish RICO because...
I want the common purpose, though, would be to serve Sean Combs, make him happy, fulfill whatever desires he wants, right?
Well, that's exactly what the defense is ultimately, I think, going to argue. And this may be such a fine point that this is something that's hashed out in the courts of appeal. But advancing the interests of an individual is not advancing the interests of the actual criminal enterprise or the enterprise itself. It's a very fine legal note, but I think the defense is keying in exactly on that point.
You're a good attorney. Did anybody tell you that? You're a good attorney, making a good argument here. Okay, got an update from court. The judge says, what's the relevance of these exhibits? Again, talking about photographs of Cassandra Ventura, it appears. Well, so the judge asks, what's the relevance of these exhibits? The next witness did Miss Ventura's makeup. But what's the purpose of the pictures? It's a 402 issue first, relevance. Combs' attorney responds, Ms. Ventura testified about her career being impacted. And the prosecutor says, I'll stipulate. David, so it seems to me the defense is suggesting to the idea that Sean Combs controlled all aspects of her life, controlled her career, her appearance, very important power dynamics for sex trafficking. But it does become a question if this is relevant. What are you taking away from that?
Look, I think it's a minor point. I mean, they're arguing over the introduction of this photo, whether it comes in or doesn't come in. Is it, at the end of the day, is it really going to make a big difference? So I get it. But again, I think I don't see the relevance to it unless I hear more argument.
Got a question for you, Safa. This is from MM7. Is it likely the prosecution is starting with older victims and older evidence, Cassie, Kid Cudi, but as the trial continues, they will get into more recent crimes and victims tied into the RICO case? Good question.
It's very possible. I think one of the main reasons why Miss Ventura went first initially was because she was victim number one. Not only that, she's very heavily pregnant. She could go into labor at some point in time in the very near future. And they wanted to ensure that she would still be able to testify in the event that she ultimately went into labor and would be out on some sort of maternity leave for the remainder of the trial. So I think that's initially why they put her on. I think we've still got to hear from victim 2 and victim 3. I expect that they are going to be alleged newer victims and that they will provide more up-to-date or more recent testimony about more recent acts and activities alleged against Mr. Combs.
Safa, you mentioned alleged victim number 3, so let me throw this question to you. This is from Vero 463. Wasn't victim 3 subpoenaed? Wouldn't they be prosecuted for not appearing in court? Because there's an issue about where is this person? Are they having trouble contacting this person? It's a good question.
They can absolutely be prosecuted. So it's going to be interesting to see what route the government takes with respect to this victim. That is a material witness. That person has been subpoenaed. I think I've heard not only have they not been able to get a hold of victim 3, but they also haven't been able to get a hold of the attorney. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's at least what I've heard. So very interesting to see how the government's going to handle this. Now, this person seems to not be cooperative at this point. Does the government really want to put a witness on who has been missing in action and uncooperative will also be a question that they're going to really have to strategically decide.
I got a question for you, Matt. This is from NLin93. If there were DNA from the car, so I think they're talking about Kid Cudi's Porsche that was allegedly set on fire by Sean Combs and his associates. If there were DNA from the car, wouldn't the feds know? Because he was asked about, do you know if DNA was extracted from the car? And he didn't know. This was the question that he was posed by Brian Steele. The DNA taken, are you aware it came back being a female? And there was an objection. Okay. And then Steele says, do you know there were DNA results? And Scott Miscuddy said no. So I guess go back to the question, if there were DNA from the car, wouldn't the feds know?
You would certainly think so. But, you know, as a general proposition for everyone to understand, heat is one of the things that destroys DNA. Okay, heat, time, water. DNA is biological material, of course, and that you wouldn't expect to find too much at an arson scene when it comes to DNA in general.
I mentioned I have another question from you from Mbasa Naebi. He mentioned this before. So you talked about how many times he can appeal if he's convicted. Follow-up question, can one appeal if they take a deal?
Generally, no. Once you take a deal, it essentially is, the appellate process is essentially ended at that. You've admitted what you've done. But I don't see any prospect here of any sort of settlement in this. This is going to go to a jury verdict.
There was talk about whether or not he rejected a deal before trial, but now we're in the crux of the trial. We're after Cassandra Ventura's testimony. So the prosecution could be like, you forced us to put her on the stand and recount these traumatic memories, alleged traumatic memories. They might not offer a deal, or if it is a deal, it's not going to be as attractive as it was before, right?
Look, once the trial starts, once you get a jury panel, you start calling witnesses, it is very rare that this is not a civil case. And by the way, Dave Ring knows more about the civil side of sexual abuse than anybody else in the country. Civil cases often will settle in the middle because it's about money. Criminal cases are very different. This missile has been launched, so to speak, as one of my old bosses used to put it, and this is gonna get hashed out by the jury.
Speaking of David Ring, let me go to David Ring. We got a question from Claudio Zadorotos. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Could Sean Combs' defense be shielding officials present at the freak-off parties by not requesting the videos, choosing to play for a lighter sentence instead?
Well, I think if I understand the question right, are they saying is Sean Combs' defense trying to, hide evidence in this trial? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's tough to know. Shielding officials present at the freak-off party. So I'm guessing they're assuming there are other people who are being not mentioned at these, freak-offs, and was deliberately not, moving forward with more evidence to show who was there. But how that ties into maybe a lighter sentence, I'm not sure 100% follow, but yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think that's the prosecution's job, right? The prosecution is the one they're going to go out there and they're going to find the witnesses who are there and who are willing to testify about this. So Sean Combs doesn't have any obligation to produce witnesses that hurt his defense. That's the prosecution's job. I think the prosecution so far has done a fine job of finding some of these key witnesses and former employees who are testifying and really laying out a RICO case against Combs and the enterprise.
So we have another update from court. It says, so again, it's back and forth about what image or images will be shown to the jury. The judge says, this one is of a public event, so what's the problem? Prosecutor Comey says, it's a low-cut dress. Judge says, I'm allowing it in, but not 652 nor 745. bring in the witness and the jury. And the witness is a Mila Morales, who's a celebrity makeup artist. What's 652 or 745?
As far as the evidence code?
Yeah, if you know off the top of your head.
Essentially what the judge is doing is the judge is weighing prejudicial effect versus probative value on all these items of evidence. And the judge has to do that for virtually any item of evidence. So he is allowing in photos from the public event, but this judge has done a very good job, in my opinion, of kind of cutting away the fat, so to speak, on some of the more shocking or other things. For example, the jury saw stills of some of the freak-offs, but not the full video. It's going to be interesting to see what the defense does with that overall, but that's a judge's job. You're watching a judge essentially be a judge.
So before you guys got on, I was doing, I was giving my own analysis of the case, and one of the questions that I was asked was, if he's acquitted, do you think they're going to bring more charges against him? I said, probably highly unlikely. Whatever evidence they had against him, they were going to go forward with right now. Which does beg the question, because I brought it up before. I'll go to you, Safa. This is a question from Anthony O'Farrell. Why aren't there any minor victims in the criminal case? Because you and I know that he has been alleged to have abused minors in civil lawsuits. Criminal arena, very different than civil. But again, why, Safa, aren't there any minor victims in the criminal case?
You know, I don't think that there's any evidence to support that there are any minor victims in this case. And if there certainly was evidence to support that, the government would have charged him with that. You know, the burden of proof and the standard in our criminal world or during criminal practice is much different than civil. Civil is a much lower burden. With respect to criminal charges, there has to be an establishment of probable cause to make the arrest, and then the case will litigate on. And at the jury or at the jury stage, once the jury gets the case, the government has to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for each element of each offense. I don't think that there is any evidence that would indicate that there were children victims or child victims, and because of that, the government wouldn't charge that.
Got an update from court. This is okay. So this is this makeup artist being questioned. The prosecutor says, "Do you recognize anyone you've worked for?" And Ms. Morales says, "Sean Combs in the gray sweater and white collar." "When did you work for Mr. Combs?" 2000 to 2005. "Then who?" "Rihanna." "Who else?" "Jennifer Lopez." "Cassie." David, what are you expecting from this witness?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure. We're going to find out. I mean, did she witness more violent acts? Was she involved in some of these RICO predicate acts that she was drawn into? Did she see the bruises on Cassie's face? Did Cassie confide in her that she was being, beaten by Sean Combs? We don't know. We're going to find out really quickly.
And maybe covering up the bruises with makeup. That could potentially be what's going on. Got a question for you, Matt. Chris Buono. Can Combs at any time during the trial be charged with even more, or did all the charges need to be revealed in the indictment before the trial started? So kind of similar question.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. The answer is no. Okay, the defense is entitled to notice. So if new evidence comes to light, they would have to, in theory, charge that in a separate case. But like you said, Jesse, that's very, very rare, if not impossible, when it comes to criminal prosecutions, because he has the right to a defense, he has the right to prepare, he has the right to investigate and all that sort of thing. So the answer is no.
Safa, a question from Lily Gazarian. If the case becomes a hung jury and needs to be retried, will he be released until the new trial begins?
I highly doubt that. They've made so many applications for his release, and the circumstances really won't change. They have to prove a risk of flight and a threat to the community, and they seem to have proven that here, and the judge seems to have gone along with the prosecution in the belief that there at least he may not be a risk of flight. However, there may be an issue with regard to being a threat to the community or witness tampering and things of that nature. So I do expect that if for some reason this lands in a mistrial, that he will remain in custody pending the new trial.
Okay, I got a new poll update and I got a court update. The poll update is, we put it out, does it matter if Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car? 81% say yes, 19% say no. I side with the yes. I mentioned it before. Goes to arson, one of the predicate crimes. For racketeering, also goes to this overall concept of a criminal enterprise and violence and people helping Combs commit crimes or conceal crimes. That's the allegation put forward by the prosecution. Update from court. Prosecutor asks this makeup artist, when did you work with Cassie? Morales responds, 2007 until COVID, so 13 years. She was like a little sister to me. How much older than her are you? A few years. Did you see her with injuries on her face? 2010 Grammy weekend Prince party. There you go, David.
Corroborative evidence. You know, the prosecution's doing a really good job of bringing in other witnesses who corroborate Cassie's testimony. And why is that important? It builds up Cassie's credibility in front of this jury, that she's just not up there saying things that aren't true. Now you have these independent witnesses coming in, backing up exactly what she testified to. Very important.
But David, I will say, I think I could feel very confident to say at this point, the prosecution believes that Sean Combs physically abused Cassandra Ventura Fine. The documents, okay, the photographs, the 2016 video, her testimony, Dawn Richard's testimony, Kerry Morgan's testimony, makeup artist, I mean, her mother. I think there's a lot to suggest. The question becomes, is it sex trafficking? What do you think at this point in the case?
Absolutely, I think it is. I mean, look, he is bringing in, basically male sex workers and paying them in cash to participate in these freak-offs. And you can have a debate all day on whether Cassie Ventura, it was consensual or not. I'll always take the position that it was not consensual. She is a victim. She's being beaten and she's being manipulated. And to me, that is absolutely sex trafficking.
Yeah, the counter argument is, of course, the defense would say it's just domestic violence. They're not attaching the physical violence to the freak-offs per se. But I will say this much. I think the two most concrete examples, why am I talking to myself? For two most concrete examples, I think, of sex trafficking, the 2016 tape, right? So he allegedly kicks her, beats her, drags her right after a freak-off or an alleged freak-off. And the allegation that on a plane, he shows her tapes of the freak-offs as a way to intimidate her, embarrass her. And what does he allegedly demand right after they land? A freak-off. She has a freak-off. That feels to me two concrete examples of sex trafficking.
Well, that's what the prosecution's theory is, certainly. But remember, there's essentially three incarnations of that. One is it's one of the predicate acts of the RICO allegations, okay? The other is the sex trafficking itself, but as the defense has pointed out, they must establish essentially fraud, coercion, or some form of threat of fear of force. So force, fraud, or coercion. The theory is coercion. She's being coerced to do that for financial reasons and everything else. The third incarnation, if you will, of that is the transportation of prostitutes over state lines. Sure. Those are Mann Act violations. Those carry up to a 10-year penalty each. I think the prosecution's already satisfied that.
I do too.
What the defense is going to argue is that this is exactly what you said. This is a domestic violence case. And it's the world's most persuasive domestic violence case with the video and everything else. But that is a problem in their relationship, and it doesn't go to advancing this criminal enterprise that they've alleged.
That's why they're focusing so much. He's jealous, he's anger, she was jealous, problems in the relationship.
I'm going to stop that there. They were wrapping that up. And I really want to point out, maybe Diddy's lawyer was right about this just being a witch hunt against a black man that, billionaire, playing with billionaire money on billionaire type of time. He pissed off Briaggio or whoever the hell that liquor is. They were able to get into some high places, set it off on Diddy. And this is what they got going on. We're now going to sip some tea from the Burden of Proof. Thanks to ABC News Live.
Hi, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Week 2 of testimony in the trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs wrapping up today with witnesses, including the general manager of a luxury Beverly Hills hotel on the stand. The jury also hearing from rapper Kid Cudi today. He testified about a break-in at his house, at one point comparing Combs to a Marvel supervillain. The rapper, whose real name is Scott Mescudi, also testifying about his car being set on fire, allegedly after Combs found out he was dating Cassie Ventura. Now, prosecutors allege Combs firebombed Mescudi's car, an allegation they could try to weave into the racketeering conspiracy count involving arson. Now, Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Also today, Diddy's former assistant, who was granted immunity, testifying about what he claims he saw happen on a private plane and an apple throwing incident that he called the last straw working for Diddy. Coming up, Kid Cudi's message for fans after his big day in court. Plus, it's one of the most searched topics tonight, what people want to know about Kid Cudi's dog. I want to get right to Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky, who has been in the courtroom every day of this trial. Aaron, let's get right into Kid Cudi appearing in court. Paint the picture for us. How did he walk in?
Unlike any other witness that we have seen so far, he's in a leather jacket, white t-shirt, jeans, and smoking a cigarette as he's entering court. And then he takes his position comfortably in the witness box, surveys the room. The jury is interested in this figure because he's a Grammy-winning rapper and introduced himself as Scott Muscudi. And when asked, are you better known as any other name? And he said, Kid Cudi. And right from the start, you knew this was a unique witness. And he talked about two instances in particular where he said that Sean Combs broke into his house, and he told the jury about his suspicions that later Sean Combs arranged the firebombing of his car.
Okay, Aaron, give us his vibe. What was he like on the stand? How did the jury react to all of this?
He was pretty casual. If he didn't understand something, he'd look at the lawyer and just go, huh? Or what? And at one point he let out a big yawn when he's talking about things that, you know, have been talked about in the entertainment world for more than a decade. This car fire that Kid Cudi endured in 2012. But it's significant now, Eva, as federal prosecutors try to convince the jury that Sean Combs used arson as part of the criminal enterprise that he was running.
There was a whole scuttlebutt about if he could talk about what happened to his dog. What was that all about?
Oh, so he accuses Sean Combs of breaking into his house after he finds out that he's dating Cassie Ventura. And he says when he got to the house, he found some Christmas gifts open, unwrapped, that he had bought for his family, and his dog locked up in the bathroom. And he said it made the dog kind of permanently jittery and very much on edge. I think federal prosecutors had wanted to know a little bit about the dog and how the dog responded to the house being broken into. And the judge at one point, because the defense objected, was confused, saying, like, you're going to talk about the trauma inflicted on the dog. And the judge said, well, I know this is a very important topic. He laughed a little bit. And unfortunately, the prosecutor said the dog is no longer with us. But Kid Cudi's clearly a dog lover. He said that he found out from his dog's babysitter, the words he used, that his car was on fire. One early morning phone call that he received from this woman to say that his porch had been torched.
Cassie Ventura's former makeup artist was also on the stand today. What did she say?
Mila Morales said she first met Cassie Ventura, Eva, when she was about 16 years old. She had made her up for various events over the years, but she recalled Grammy Award weekend in 2010. She said they had been out. Prince was having a party. They were out for dinner. They finally get back to the Beverly Hills Hotel. Mila Morales falls asleep, but she says Cassie Ventura comes in a moment later and almost immediately followed by Sean Combs. And Sean Combs demands, where the F is she? Cassie Ventura had gone into the bedroom. Sean Combs followed her in there. Mila Morales says she heard screaming and a commotion. Sean Combs storms out of the hotel suite. And when Mila Morales next sees Cassie Ventura, she has a black eye, knots on her head. She took her home and had a doctor friend come and examine her to see if she had a concussion. The doctor apparently recommended that Cassie Ventura go to the ER, but Morales said she didn't want to go.
We also heard from the general manager of an upscale Beverly Hills hotel on the stand today. He talked about hotel logs. Why?
This was from L'Hermitage in Beverly Hills, and Sean Combs had stayed there a bunch over the years, according to the reservation log. And with each guest that was a repeat visitor, there was what was called a profile log established. And under the heading for Sean Combs, it said that housekeepers...
Ooh, they got pictures of the hotels, y'all. Look at that. This is from the L'Hermitage Beverly Hills Hotel. Log shown the jury about Sean Combs' former stays. Girl, what the was they doing? And well, we know they was freaking, but like they was fighting too. Jesus, they tore that poor hotel up.
Had noticed that there was always candle wax all over the place and that he used a lot of oil. And the jury had already heard candle wax, baby oil, those were things for the freak-offs.
Aaron Katursky for us there at the courthouse. Thank you so much, Aaron. ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer was also in court.
I mean, it just looked like, those scenes look like, the broken nights and dreams with Diddy days and nights. Everything broken, everything destroyed, everything in a disarray. It looked like the broken dreams of Diddy.
Court today. You are here to break this all down for us. Okay, so it was a big day in court. What stood out to you?
So we all showed up for Kid Cudi. We knew he was going to testify, but I did not expect this quote from Kid Cudi. It came in the context of there was some back and forth between him and Sean Combs. He wasn't responding to him in terms of whether or not he was dating Cassie. His car gets Molotov cocktailed. He shows up at the Soho house to try to kind of squash the beef, so to speak, with Combs. And he says this is what Combs is doing. He's standing there staring out the window with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. It got a couple laughs in the court, but also painted this very menacing and very awkward kind of encounter between Sean Combs and Kid Cudi in relation to who's dating Cassie.
We also have to talk about this alleged car bombing situation. What did Kid Cudi say happened here?
So a number of things, right? A little bit of context. Prior to this alleged arson, there is a alleged...
Kid Cudi has introduced evidence into the testimony that appears to be a picture of the top of his Porsche cut open, toe up,
that Kid Cudi...
What do you guys make of it? Do you guys think that, after 10 years, this can be something that they convict Diddy of, tie it into the racketeering, trafficking, arson, all of that, from 10 years ago? And do they have distinct proof that Diddy really did it? Any evidence besides Kid Cudi and others speculating that it happened? Because Diddy denies it. Is there anything other than them saying he did it as a way of proving that he did it?
He says Sean Combs is participating in. Someone calls him by the name of Miss Clark saying, Combs is in your home. He calls Combs. He's like, where are you? I'm here. I'm going to come see you, whatever it may be. And a few days later, this happens. The cut of the top of his Porsche and a Molotov cocktail inside. We saw some charring on the inside of that vehicle. And we've heard this from Cassie's civil lawsuit and this case when she testified before, that this was meant to be a threat, according to her, of Sean Combs towards Kid Cudi.
And we should say that we heard Kid Cudi on the stand say when they talked about this, Combs denied having anything to do with this apparent situation. Exactly. Okay, so on the cross, the defense seemed to really push Kid Cudi on his relationship with Cassie. What was that all about?
So the sense that I got was that she's playing into this relationship with Kid Cudi and Sean Combs. That Sean Combs, as we heard, was on a break with Cassie, and then they started dating, Kid Cudi and her. And what the defense was getting at was, well, she lied to you. She played you, that they weren't really on again, off again, but in fact, they were still dating, and you didn't know this. And the entire time you were dating, Sean Combs never interrupted this relationship, never got involved. He didn't know he was in the scene at all. And I think what they're trying to get at is Cassie was free to leave. She was free to have her own relationship, and Sean Combs wasn't intersecting with that. And also this idea that she was manipulative in some way, shape, or form, saying the words.
So how do you feel, Sippers, that this narrative plays into the prosecution or Diddy's defense? The defense attorney asked Kid Cudi, the person who played you, the person who played Sean, was Miss Ventura true? And Kid Cudi responds, yeah. So does that, testify into how Cassie was also wrapped up in manipulation, narcissism, and just, playing on the emotions and however have you of the men that she was involved with all up until she finally did leave Diddy and get with the trainer, Alex Fine. Even up until she was with Alex Fine, she was still going back willingly, voluntarily, from what she testified, being with Diddy on an intimate basis. And she also said in her testimony she did not want the freak offs to stop. She wanted them to stay how they were when they first started doing them. How do you guys feel that that's going to tie in for either side? I mean, I just don't see this persecuting Diddy. It's also showing how Cassie manipulated and played around with the men that she had in her life around the time she was with Diddy.
That, well, Cassie played not only you, but also Sean Combs, and Kid Cudi agreed.
We also have to talk about the former assistant who got the immunity from yesterday. He was back on the stand this morning. Did he say anything to you that made sense for the immunity deal here?
No. And it's one of the reasons why I woke up so early and showed up, because in my mind, I practice in the Southern District of New York. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you going to give this person immunity for? Meaning that they cannot be prosecuted based on what they say. That is so great that you're waiting for them. And it wasn't really much. 3 different interactions of assault, 2 between Cassie, 1 between Gina, and the fact that he bought some drugs, not as much as I thought it'd be.
Okay, so we've got this long weekend that's happening. Court's not in session tomorrow. It's not in session on Monday. How do you think that impacts both sides of this case?
It's all about what the jury.
Well, they're going to have a long Memorial weekend. No court for Diddy on Friday or Monday. He will be sitting in his cell awaiting to start his trial back up on Tuesday of next week, okay? The 27th.
Is going to be left with thinking about the last few words they've heard. They heard about the wax and the baby oil, the strawberry and the chocolates, the abuse allegations from the Grammy of 2010. And of course, the last thing they heard is about an HSI investigator talking about extracting information from 3 of Cassie's laptops. Those are going to be the last things in their mind over the next 4 days because they're off tomorrow as well.
Yeah, back in court on Tuesday. Brian Buckmeyer, thank you so much. Well, now that testimony is wrapped ahead of the long weekend, we want to look back at a notable moment this week. Yesterday, a forensic psychologist took the stand as an expert witness for the prosecution, telling the jury in general about why some people stay in abusive relationships. Joining me now is Dr. Erin Nelson. She is not involved in the case against Sean Combs, but she knows what it's like to be a forensic psychologist on a high-profile criminal case. Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for being with us. Let's just start right there. Why do people stay?
You know, one of the things that is really important when you're talking to a jury or a case is that the lay public, the general public, obviously always has the why doesn't someone just walk away? And something that's really important to understand from a victimology standpoint is the sense of omnipotence that even in everyday relationships, somebody who has power and control over someone can exert. It's about the perception of the victim. And in this case, I'm certain that the forensic psychologist would have been looking at both the victimology and the offender's behavior to try to explain that to the jury.
So often in these types of circumstances, and even with this case, we've seen the comments online, people saying, well, she could have just left. What do you say to that?
I say that regardless of how high profile the matter is, such as this one, or to the millions of women that are suffering from intimate partner violence at home, that is the fundamental misunderstanding that is important to explain, especially in a criminal case to the jury, is that when somebody is in a domestic violence or an intimate partner or coercive control situation, that concept that lots of people think about, it's why don't they just walk out the door? Why don't they just take their things and go? That the psychology of it can be so overwhelming and so powerful for a victim in that stance that it feels impossible and perception rules the day.
Dr. Erin Nelson, thank you so much for being with us. And we should say, if you are experiencing domestic violence, help is available. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline 24/7. That number is 800-799-7233. Still ahead, breaking down the legal strategies at play on both sides with rapper Kid Cudi in court today. Could evidence pose an issue for the defense? And the rivalry that's defined hip-hop for a generation, how it's tied to this Diddy trial. Today, including a big name in hip-hop who we've been talking about, Kid Cudi. Let's break down the key legal strategies that we saw. We have Brian Buckmeyer playing the defense, Bernarda Villalona playing prosecutor. Let's get right into this. The police report, Bernarda. A break-in to Kid Cudi's home in 2011. Does this actually matter?
It does matter in the sense of not really the break-in, but the arson part of it. But the break-in just leads you to believe, like, Jesus, how demented is Sean Combs? And I think that is what the prosecution was trying to drill to this jury, to show how his jealousy, his anger, his rage, and his being possessive over Cassie, like how far he's willing to go. And I think that's exactly what was the strategy of the prosecution, in addition to, of course, what was important, the arson part, in order to meet that racketeering conspiracy part, because breaking and entering is not part of it.
Brian, did they prove that it was him?
I think they got very close. I think there's actually a bit of a mistake by the defense. And what I mean by that is during the direct examination of Kid Cudi, it got to a point where they led us all the way to the edge. It was like, oh, maybe Sean Combs did or maybe he didn't. But when Kid Cudi talked about arranging a meeting at the Soho House with Sean Combs and was asked why he did it, he came out and said, well, because I thought that Sean Combs was a part of this. Now, they objected to that and it's sustained. They should not contemplate that in the end of the case. But as we say as attorneys,
you can't unring the bell.
Can't unring the bell.
Jury heard it.
So I think it's going to be difficult for the defense there.
Okay, the jury also saw photos of Kid Cudi's car. What was the prosecution trying to do there with the pictures?
Well, they're corroborating that there was an arson that took place. So aside from Kid Cudi's word that his car was blown up by a Molotov cocktail, you also want to show the photographs because the picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So by showing it, the jury got real insight as to look how serious it was. So it corroborates the testimony.
Do you think the evidence is a problem for the defense?
I think they're going to try to steer away from it. They're going to say, okay, an arson happened. We're not sure. Maybe Collins did it or did not do it. They're going to say, this is what a jealous boyfriend does. This is not what a sex trafficker does. I think they try to reposition themselves as to who doesn't have an ex who has tried to burn up some of their clothes or their cars.
But the car? Blow up the car?
Yeah. It's what crazy exes do.
Blow up cars?
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't want that crazy ex.
I think that's the only argument they have here, because they can't really go away from it wasn't Sean Combs, because so many of the breadcrumbs and the circumstantial evidence does point to him.
Yeah, and also you have, remember the email that Cassie has sent to her mother talking about the threat that Sean Combs made about causing harm to Kid. So I think it's strong there that it was Sean Combs that was responsible, or someone working with Sean Combs. And again, conspiracy is a part of the indictment, so you got it there.
It was interesting to see the picture anyway, because we all heard about that and hadn't seen the pictures of it yet.
Exactly.
Cassie's former makeup artist also testified. She said she saw alleged abuse. And that's, what's interesting about that is we've now heard multiple people say they saw this alleged domestic violence.
And multiple incidents, more importantly. We're not talking about the same incident. We're talking about now several incidents throughout these years that they were together.
Does that matter in all of this?
Yes, because remember what the prosecution is saying is that this violence is tied in the sense of the coercion and the control that Sean Combs had over Cassie. So that way Cassie wasn't really able to consent, be a willing participant in these sexual acts and these freak-offs. So it's all tied into it. So it's not just domestic violence. When you tie in the domestic violence with what Dr. Hughes testified to yesterday, and you put that all together, then you have a more clearer picture that there's no way that Cassie at all times was able to consent to these freak-offs.
I think it's a little bit difficult, though, for the government in this sense, though, because I think they might lose the forest from the trees in the sense of if this was always a domestic abuse relationship, which they have said it is, and they have all these incidences of domestic abuse, where are we separating from when it's just simple abuse that doesn't lead to a freak-off and abuse that does lead into a freak-off? Because we have all these incidences of abuse, but not always leading to I'm doing this so you participate in a freak-off.
But all you need is one. All you need is one when you're talking about sex trafficking or transportation to engage in prostitution. All I need is one freak off that was where she wasn't a willing participant, where she didn't consent to in order to make out the charges.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Coming up, who is Kid Cudi and what some might find surprising about his high-profile appearance today, plus why the rapper's dog is one of the most searched topics tonight related to the Diddy trial. Welcome back. There's a lot of buzz surrounding today's big witness in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Grammy-winning rapper Kid Cudi, who briefly dated Cassie Ventura, who has this message tonight after taking the stand.
People have been hitting me up the past week, just checking in, and even today. This is a stressful situation. I'm glad it's behind me.
Joining me tonight, ABC News contributor and DJ Megan Wright. Megan, and thanks so much for being with us. For people who don't know, who is Kid Cudi?
Kid Cudi is a real, I would say, hip hop gem. Okay, he is a Grammy Award winning artist, producer. He's also an actor. He broke out into the scene in 2008 with his hit single Day and Night. But here's the thing, like, we don't really see much of Kid Cudi outside of when he's promoting his art. We really don't. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's not in a bunch of paparazzi pictures. He really keeps to himself, but he has a very strong and very loyal fan base, which is why him showing up, at this trial, even just him getting out of the car, fans seeing him, in his jeans and in his leather jacket, smoking a cigarette like we see here, like that was very surreal for fans because, again, you're kind of getting an inside look, of this guy that you don't really get to see so much, talking about something that not just in the hip hop community, but also fans have kind of heard rumors about. But I don't ever think there came a point where we thought, okay, we're actually going to hear or read, a transcript of what Cudi is talking about relating to his car blowing up. And then we hear, or his car being set on fire. And then we hear, the play-by-play of everything that happened with Cassie. And then we hear, about his dog, and then going to, see Diddy and him standing like a Marvel supervillain. Like, I don't think people expected that, especially from a guy who is usually very, very private. It was definitely surreal.
Yeah, getting to see those pictures today was really interesting. Suge Knight's name has been mentioned a few times in this trial already. Can you just give us a little bit of history here and how it's tied to this like long-standing East Coast, West Coast rap rivalry?
Sure. Yeah, the East Coast versus the West Coast, hip hop rivalry is one of the most talked about rivalries of all time. And of course, you have the beef that came from that, which is, Big versus Pac and also their respective labels. Okay, so you have Big, who was signed to Bad Boy, which was helmed by Sean Combs, who at the time went by Puff Daddy, who now, of course, we refer to him as Diddy. Then you have Tupac, who was on Death Row, which was under Suge Knight. And so if I can get the story as quick as possible, it kind of goes, these two guys, Pac and Big, started off as friends, but things kind of changed in 1994 when Pac was shot outside of Quad Studios. He blamed Big and Puff, who both said they didn't have anything to do with it. But then, things kind of, led and went, forward with this back and forth. This records were put out. And although you can't say that, this beef led to their murders, Pac was murdered in September of 96. Big was murdered in, March of 97. And it thought this stayed in the 90s. It didn't, as you can tell with what happened in the trial.
Yeah, we're hearing about it again. Megan Wright, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Now, there's no cameras in court during the Sean Combs trial, but that is not stopping people from going online, trying to keep up with all the latest updates from the courtroom. And that's where our daily segment, Searched, comes in, where we break down some of the top search trends about this case. Some of today's biggest searches: Molotov cocktails, Kid Cudi's dog, how much Diddy paid Cassie, and when will this trial end? Joining me now, from Los Angeles, is our ABC News contributor, Kelly Carter. She covers entertainment and pop culture for us. Okay, let's start with the Molotov cocktails. That's a term that came up during Kid Cudi's testimony.
Yeah, people want to know what that is because we've heard about the alleged incident with the car. Of course, Sean has denied any allegations of arson, but Kid Cudi and also Cassie have alleged that this happened. Wanted to see what that looked like, and finally people got a chance to see those photos. So they want to know what it is. And obviously it's a very illegal, dangerous, handmade bomb.
We also have to talk about Kid Cudi's dog because that also came up today and people have questions. So what is there to know?
Yeah, I mean, well, the dog is no longer with us, first off. But he said his dog was very distressed because the dog, after, again, an alleged break-in, was placed inside of a bathroom and locked inside of a bathroom, and the dog was extremely jittery in the aftermath of that experience. And no one wants to hear that about a dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone loves a dog, right?
Yeah.
Now, also, it's interesting because it's been a couple days since Cassie Ventura took the stand. Her testimony, though, continues to really generate interest. Here's one of the searches that's trending. How much did Diddy pay Cassie?
Yeah, it's interesting how that keeps coming up, right? Because again, her testimony was last week. And in her testimony, she revealed that she was paid $20 million from the 2023 civil suit that she filed, and that was settled inside of 24 hours. And I think people probably keep coming back to that as new information comes out in the trial, because they're, again, trying to connect all the dots here. And I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that there is out there to connect.
Kelly Carter, thank you as always for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. And thank you.
We're going to pause it right there. Okay, they're wrapping up. I'm going to review and fill y'all's teacup up on some of the things that are going on. So, yes, right? Diddy has always been in the conversation of Tupac and Biggie's death, right? There's a lot of content out about that, y'all. Dating back since Tupac got murdered, Biggie got murdered. Y'all can definitely Google and find 100 million documentaries on it. Diddy usually 9 times out of 10 pops up on it. Diddy was the bad boy manager and producer that Biggie Smalls was signed to. East Coast, West Coast. Tupac was on the East Coast or West Coast. Biggie was on the West Coast. And, it's just speculation that Puffy is surrounded in the murders of both of those laid to rest rappers, okay? So rest in peace to Kid Cudi's dog. I wonder what kind of dog he had. Let's see. A Molotov cocktail is a explosive bomb that people usually put in a bottle with some type of explosive liquid in it, gasoline, perhaps, or however have you, something very flammable. They put a rag out of it. A rag is inside of the bottle and it hangs out the top of the bottle. They light the outside of the whatever they have hanging out the bottle, a ripped up t-shirt, whatever, however have you, and they throw it at whatever they're wanting to blow up. Okay, that's what a Molotov cocktail is. So we've got some Kid Cudi on the.
Good evening, I'm Mike Marza, recapping what has been another key day in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Another celebrity testified today in the federal sex trafficking trial of Mr. Combs. Performer Kid Cudi was on the stand. The rapper telling the tale of threats.
Make sure that you guys are liking and subscribing as soon as you come in the room and have your teacups filled. Make sure that you always give back by liking and subscribing. Thank you for sipping tea with Tanisha. We're wrapping up week 2 of the Diddy trial. Tomorrow there is no court nor Monday. Okay, Monday is Memorial Day, so Diddy will be in his cell from tomorrow until Tuesday. Okay, we're gonna sip some tea now from ABC 7 News on the trial recap for the week.
Against Cassie Ventura, and evidence showing an act of arson, prosecutors say, on Mr. Cudi's car, on Kid Cudi's car. One he says that Combs is the one behind. In a moment that you'll hear in just a moment, as we talk about exactly what went down at the Soho House in Los Angeles. A lot to get to. ABC News legal contributor Bernarda Villalona standing by to dig deeper into everything that unfolded in court. But first up, with a recap, here's Darla Miles.
Scott Muscati, Cassie Ventura, and Sean Combs, a romantic rivalry that federal prosecutors allege led to unthinkable acts of intimidation. The 34-year-old musician and actor known as Kid Cudi taking the stand Thursday morning. Muscati testifying today that he and Ventura dated in 2011 during a breakup with Combs. Also telling the court when Combs found out about the relationship, he got a frantic call from Ventura that she was nervous, stressed, and scared. The next phone call, Muscati says, was from Capricorn Clark, an employee for Combs, telling him that she, Diddy, and another person were inside of his house.
So, is Capricorn Clark a girl or a guy? They just showed a picture of a girl, as they mentioned, Capricorn Clark. Do y'all think that's a girl? I thought it was a bodyguard or something. It looked like it may be a girl. Drop some tea in the chat and let me know if you guys know if Capricorn Clark is a girl or a guy.
Muscati telling the court that he immediately called Combs, recounting the conversation for jurors. He said, "Expletive, you in my house?" He was like, "Yeah, what's up?" I said, "Expletive, are you in my house?" He said, "I just want to talk to you." I said, "I'm on my way." He said, "I'm here waiting for you." Muscati going on to say when he got home, no one was there and he called the police. It was just 2 days ago when federal prosecutors showed the jury this email Ventura sent to her mother, dated 1 day after the break-in, claiming Combs was threatening to hurt Muscati. Then a few weeks later, in January 2012, Muscati says his dog sitter texted him these photos of his red Porsche, telling him his car was on fire. Prosecutors asking, "What did you see when you got home?" Muscati responding, "Just the damage. I saw the Molotov cocktail." "What was your reaction to the damage to your car?" Muscati telling the court his reaction was, "What the expletive?" But defense attorneys pointing the blame to Cassie Ventura, asking, "The person who played you, the person who played Sean, was Miss Ventura, true?" Muscati answering, "Yeah." And as to the two incident at Muscati's home, the defense asking, "There was no forced entry to the home." Muscati answering, "No." Defense attorneys also asking, "In the last 13 and a half years, have you been notified of any action in this case?" Muscati again answering no. Now, there are 4 other prosecution witnesses on the stand today, including a former personal assistant for Combs who said he quit after witnessing the violence with Cassie Ventura and another girlfriend. There was also a former makeup artist who says she saw injuries on Cassie Ventura, and a hotel manager who says they had to charge Sean Combs an extra $1,000 retainer whenever he reserved a room because he frequently left it dirty with candle wax and baby oil.
Our thanks to Darla Miles, joined now by ABC News legal contributor Bernarda Villalona. A lot to get to, as always, in this case. But let's start with Kid Cudi, because he was one of the more high-profile witnesses to take the stand. Take me to this moment. We're talking about the car that was firebombed. We saw the images of the car. You see the hole and the Molotov cocktail that was thrown in to light that fire. There was a moment that involved the Soho house, a meeting between Kid Cudi and Sean Combs, and the allegation of a supervillain. Take me through the testimony and what jurors heard today.
Oh, my God. So it was literally with this case is like can't stop, won't stop. There's always something going on. So in terms of Kid Cudi, so if we take it back a little bit, because it starts off with the breaking and entering in the sense that someone entered Kid Cudi's home and opened up some gifts that he had at the table. And supposedly there was a conversation between Sean Combs and Kid Cudi, and Kid Cudi was like cursing, "Are you at my house?" And Sean Combs says yes to that extent, but then when Kid Cudi goes there, Sean Combs is no longer at the house. Fast forward, dealing with this Molotov cocktail that is placed inside of the Porsche of Kid Cudi. Car blows up. We saw all the damage to his car. That very same day, Kid Cudi is like, he contacts Sean Combs and he's like, "We need to meet because this is going way too far." So that's when they have that meeting at the Soho house where it's Kid Cudi, it's Sean Combs, and at some point Cassie enters. But in terms of when Kid Cudi says he goes inside of the Soho house, inside of this meeting room where Sean Combs is, and that Sean Combs is looking out the window and that he has both of his arms behind his back as a Marvel supervillain. Literally, the courtroom just started laughing at how Kid Cudi portrayed Sean Combs. But either way, they kill the beef, so to say, and says like, "Look, I'm not with Cassie anymore. We're ending this. Like, this violence needs to stop."
Yeah, because when Kid Cudi said, what's up with my car?
Exactly. He says, "What car?
What car?
What are you talking about?"
And
pretty
not
much.
even really acknowledging it. Why was his testimony, Kid Cudi's testimony, so important for the prosecution?
So Kid Cudi's testimony is very important for the prosecution for the specific act, the predicate act, the racketeering act of arson. So in order to make out racketeering conspiracy, they have to prove, aside from the criminal enterprise, they have to prove that 2 predicate acts were performed. One of the predicate acts that the prosecution is alleging is one of arson. Now we know through Kid Cudi, when it comes to arson, they are talking about how it's alleged that Sean Combs was involved or personally involved in the bombing of Kid Cudi's car. So that's why it's important. Now the prosecution is trying to get through those predicate acts to try to get that racketeering conspiracy. It's going to take a while for the prosecution to get to proving racketeering conspiracy because it involves so much when you have to prove the criminal enterprise and also the racketeering activity.
In the first week of testimony, we heard a lot about allegations of sex trafficking in different cities and different escorts and Cassie herself. What about the racketeering charge? How close are prosecutors to saying, haha, this is exactly what we were talking about in the opening?
Yeah, so they're getting there little by little. So they're jumping around a bit. So, for example, today they had Mr. Kaplan testify, who was Sean Combs' personal assistant for about 2 years. Now, in terms of how they were working him for the racketeering conspiracy, they got out through him that he helped set up the rooms for these freak-offs or for these night outs or hotel stays with Sean Combs. And also he purchased some of the items on the corporate credit card, bringing in the enterprise.
Gotcha.
That after Sean Combs would stay in these rooms for these lavish stays, that he will clean up the room. Remember that the room is always a mess because of all the baby oil and fluids and stuff.
And he felt a responsibility to protect the image.
Yes, and again, protecting the image is part of the racketeering conspiracy that the prosecution is saying that the purpose of this criminal enterprise, aside from to carry out these criminal acts, but also to protect the image of Sean Combs. So they're inching at it little by little. They're not there yet, in my opinion. I think for them to get that racketeering conspiracy, I really think that they need a deep insider, a close confidant of Sean Combs to come in and testify and be like, look, I did this at the direction of Sean Combs, or to continue and further these acts that he wanted to perform.
And the defense, from the defense point of view, they're trying to say Sean Combs was violent. We see that on the video. Sean Combs assaulted Cassie Ventura.
There's no running away from it. It's on video.
Exactly, he's on video, and he's not charged with that, though. And so how effective has the defense been able to be in poking holes in the actual charges that Diddy's facing?
So let's be clear. He's not charged with domestic violence. These are federal crimes that he's charged with. But the domestic violence is important because the prosecution is saying the domestic violence, it was causing Cassie to not be able to willingly consent to these freak-offs, can't consent to this sex trafficking, because we heard from Dr. Hughes yesterday that because of the physical and emotional trauma that she suffered at the hands of Sean Combs, and because she's so traumatized where she feels hopeless and is not able to get out of this relationship because of the control that Sean Combs had over her financially, emotionally, physically, that she's not able to consent. So while we say domestic violence is not part of the charges, it's a part of the acts in the sense of involving Cassie. The defense is going to clearly continue to say, this is a domestic violence case. This is domestic violence. We're owning up to the domestic violence, but this is not sex trafficking. This is not transportation to engage in prostitution. And in terms of the racketeering conspiracy, what the defense is saying, there's no criminal enterprise here. Whatever acts that other individuals within the business, within the corporation did, they did it independently aside from Sean Combs, and that no one's going to come in and say that they were part of a criminal enterprise, that they were part of this RICO conspiracy.
The former personal assistant finished his testimony today, Mr. Kaplan.
Yes.
Did we learn more about why he was asking for immunity?
So I think, first off, it's normal for a witness to ask for immunity. For example, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I used to be a prosecutor for 16 years. If I think there is any viable crime that you can charge my client with, and you want my client to come in and speak, yes, I want a proffer. Yes, I want an immunity, because I am not going to take your word for it that you're not going to come after my client. So I rather say, give him immunity, and then he'll testify in order to protect them. Because he testified, there's a few things he testified that could have opened him up to criminal liability. The narcotics. Narcotics. Possession of narcotics. Not that it's viable that the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to go after him, but you just never know.
Gotcha, because that was the headline yesterday. He's asking for immunity. What does that mean? And so I'm glad you cleared that up.
And just to be clear with immunity, he cannot be prosecuted for any crimes that he may have testified to, with the exception of if he commits perjury. Immunity does not protect you against perjury.
Final question for today, turning to tomorrow, and it's court's on recess.
Yes.
So now you've got this break for Memorial Day, and that includes Monday as well. So you have then Friday, then you have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. How does that play with the jury? I mean, they've heard so much up until this point. This is going to be the biggest break they've had.
So, Mike, I'm concerned. I'm concerned when there's ever a break in a long trial. And the reason why is because during that long break, People are watching the news. People are exposed to social
Even though
media.
they're not supposed to.
They're not supposed to be hearing, but it's inevitable to not hear anything about this case. It's being played everywhere. So I'm concerned about that, because what if someone is inadvertently exposed to media coverage about this case, and they're not supposed to be exposed to it, and though they start doing research about the case, or someone tampers with the jurors. There's so much that could happen. We can come back on Tuesday. I wouldn't be surprised if someone tells me, oh, one of the jurors have something to say to the judge about something they may have been exposed to. So you just never know. But in terms of how does it also play, is that you have a long weekend where they're not listening to testimony. They can be thinking about the testimony, or probably doing some research when they're not supposed to. You just never know.
Interesting. We'll see how that plays out. 4 days is a long time when you think about this trial at such a quick pace so far, and then to come to a complete halt. Bernarda, always great to get your perspective. We appreciate it. So as we mentioned, the court resumes on Tuesday. That's when the testimony will start back up. Stay with Eyewitness News and ABC7NY for any new updates. We have a real-time blog of what's happening in the courtroom.
All right, we're wrapping up week 2, going into a long weekend, okay? I think tomorrow I'll come on and review the Diddy on trial. Or excuse me, not Diddy on trial. The United States versus Diddy. Okay. And I'm going to be all the way, 100 with the situation, y'all. I'm glad it's, on a hiatus for 4 days. Diddy shit is draining. Right now we're going to get into, wait, have we heard this already? Let me make sure we haven't heard this one already. Because I don't know. Diddy stuff is draining. Like, it's, weighing on you. Just thinking about some of the things that, is going on in the world already. It's already like a shit show. It's a lot going on, and Diddy just is putting the cherry on top for us every time. His trial is going on. So anyway,
a bombshell testimony from rapper Kid
Let me make
Cudi,
sure
who alleged
we
that
haven't heard
Diddy
this already.
retaliated against him after learning that Cudi was dating
because I think we've already watched this.
Essentially just recently. And so George said that it was really sad that these incidents had happened, because there was another incident with Gina, another girlfriend of Diddy, who Cassie said that who Cassie had said was kind of a problem throughout their, as far as just what's their reaction when something like this happens, and a lot of them just freeze and don't necessarily know what to do. Then all of a sudden, next thing she knew, Diddy had stormed out of the bedroom and just essentially left the hotel. And she didn't see any type of injuries to Diddy. However, when she saw Cassie, she saw a swollen eye, she saw a knot, she saw a busted lip, and then Mila said they picked up Cassie's stuff. She took Cassie over to her house, which was just about a mile away from this hotel, and Cassie had stayed with Mila for a few days at her home. Mila explained that she actually had a doctor friend who came over and kind of evaluated Cassie to see if everything was okay with her, because she said that she was worried that Cassie might have had a concussion. But she said Cassie did also have her stomach and her ribs checked out, and the doctor actually
we haven't heard that.
for them to go to the emergency.
Go back.
Later from Diddy, he said he kind of made peace with the entire situation. And so that was kind of the wrap up of his direct testimony. Obviously, with the cross, there were some holes poked in it here and there.
I think I
went right
before we even get into the cross, what exactly?
Talking about Mila, Reynolds, or I don't know her last name. Mila, okay? And that's a friend of Cassie's or ex-girlfriend of Diddy's, one of the two. So let's sip this tea now, wrapping up the week 2, day 9 of the Diddy trial. Okay.
Was the apology. What exactly did Combs apologize for?
From Kid Cudi's testimony today, he said that he was at Soho House again this being years after the Molotov cocktail, that he ran into Diddy there, and Diddy was with his daughters. And essentially Diddy had said that he was just sorry for everything, not going into much detail, not a point where he said, I was the one who had did this, I'm the one behind it, nothing like that. But essentially he just said that the apology was pretty quick, brief, and that he had moved on from the situation afterwards.
Did Kid Cudi testify about Diddy's alleged abuse of Cassie?
Well, that really was kind of touched upon during the cross-examination, the cross being presented by Brian Still, who we all know very well here at Law and Crime. But as far as what Kid Cudi said during the cross-examination, he said that Cassie never told him about sexual abuse. He said that he was in love with Cassie while the two were together, and that Kid Cudi actually never saw Diddy hit Cassie around this time. But another point that I think Brian Still was trying to point out during this testimony, during the cross-examination, is that Diddy never interrupted Kid Cudi and Cassie when they were together, and Kid Cudi said, yeah, that's pretty true. Then they started kind of talking about the burner phones and whether or not Cassie had told Kid Cudi that she had multiple phones, because while Cassie was on the stand, she did own up to the fact that she did have a burner phone, so that way Diddy wouldn't get mad or angry at her. And so when asked, did you tell the government that Cassie had multiple phones? Kid Cudi said, I can't remember, but if I said it, I said it. A little moment where people are laughing in the courtroom. But then they kind of ended on the cross-examination as far as just, again, driving the point home that this, and I hate to say it this way, that it might have been Cassie's fault for pointing Diddy to his home, because Cassie was the one that gave Diddy Kid Cudi's address, according to testimony today. So I think as far as just the big points of the cross-examination, it felt like they were kind of turning this to Cassie's fault, and this was Cassie's the reason that this had happened, because she was the one that gave the address to Diddy.
And also trying to say, you know, she was the one who played you, like she played Combs, like she's the manipulative one, she's the one who can't be trusted. And I think that's something that they've been building up a lot, talking about the her filing a lawsuit against Combs, and that she might have ulterior motives, and, you know, the burner phones, and that could be a dangerous strategy, but it's an interesting strategy nonetheless. And, you know, focusing on the fact that she said she never told Kid Cudi that she was sexually abused, which is a key component of the prosecution's case. And I also understand they asked a little bit more about, was there further investigation into the essential firebombing of your car. He was also asked about DNA, I think. And so I could see where they were going with the cross-examination, but the points were well heard by Kid Cudi's testimony. So now I want to move into the other testimony. And I actually want to backtrack, because the day started with the continued testimony of George Kaplan, right? Diddy's former assistant. Very important in a racketeering case. If you're going to be talking about racketeering in a criminal enterprise, and that Combs used his businesses and his resources and his employees and his staff to further criminal activity and cover things up, you got to get the inner circle to testify. Now, my understanding is he testified about some specific violent incidents, right? What did he describe?
Yeah, so George Kaplan, when we see him inside the courtroom today, he was wearing an olive-colored green suit. He had no tie on. He's kind of looking around waiting for the jury. But as far as just my impression of him while he was on the stand, you could tell that he had still had love for Diddy, who used to be his former boss. And it was just kind of an interesting moment. But he had recalled just two incidents about why he essentially quit his job. And the first one happened in 2015, where he was on Diddy's private jet, because, again, Diddy has a lot of money, so he's able to have his own private jet. And they were flying to Las Vegas because Diddy had a club appearance during this time. And so they're on Diddy's private jet. It's not just Diddy and Cassie, but there are other people there too. George was there, security was there, management was there, and then other team members of Diddy's were there as well too. So George said that he was sitting kind of at a table towards the back of the plane, but Cassie and Diddy themselves were behind this partition kind of also towards the back of the plane. And then all of a sudden George heard glass breaking. So he said when he had heard this glass breaking, he saw Cassie on her back on the floor and Diddy was above her. Diddy was holding this whiskey rock glass, and George said that there was tremendous commotion, and Cassie was screaming, essentially saying, "Isn't anyone seeing this?" And George said that he did nothing in this situation. He didn't de-escalate the situation. He didn't try to help Cassie. He just looked away. Cassie said, again, "Isn't anyone seeing this?" And nobody on that plane did anything to help her. So George said he was around 23 around the time when he was asked why he didn't do anything. He said he was young. He couldn't believe that he was working for an icon around this time. And again, just kind of he throughout his testimony today was really just kind of driving home the point that Diddy was such an icon, gave him his first major opportunity, and he was just so proud to be working with Diddy around this time. And so he said that he was trying to accomplish something professionally, and by speaking up and speaking out against his boss, that he wouldn't be able to accomplish this. And so Diddy told Cassie during this incident to stay in the back of the plane. Nobody again checked on her. The flight was about an hour long, according to George, and Diddy again going to that club appearance. So what George's role was in the situation after was he was to bring Cassie to the club later on. He said he didn't see any bruising on Cassie in this particular incident, but did recall another incident where she was bruised in 2015. In that particular incident, Cassie was crying on the bed. She had bruising above her right eyebrow. And George said that he was in the room for less than 3 seconds before Diddy went in, and Diddy asked him to get him ointments like a witch hazel cream to kind of get rid of the bruising. But as far as the plane incident specifically, he said that he didn't see bruising on Cassie during that incident, and nor did anyone help her during that incident. But his role after the fact was to get Cassie help get Cassie from the hotel essentially to the club so that way she could meet Diddy during his club appearance and appear that everything was all good after this pretty shocking incident.
Well, I'll tell you a few things that I take away from that. Obviously, whenever you have an assistant or a member of the inner circle allegedly helping this alleged criminal conduct, it goes towards the racketeering charge, conspiracy to commit the racketeering activity, right? The agreement between Combs and others. He can't do it by himself. But what I think is really telling, and it also came out earlier on in the trial when you had Dawn Richard testify that she witnessed Cassie being punched by Diddy in front of celebrities and they did nothing. I think it goes to the idea why Cassie Ventura Fine never spoke up, why she didn't fight back, why she didn't leave. Because the allegation would be, if these people are not stepping in, how on earth could she feel protected to do anything? I mean, if Combs, it shows the power of him. He's able to do these things and nobody does anything, nobody steps in. What do you expect her to do? Now, I'm not saying that. I think that's the prosecution, an argument they're going to move forward with. But again, this is just another symptom of that. That's another characteristic of it. Real quick, on cross-examination, though, did they question him about the fact that this wasn't for the benefit of a criminal enterprise, right? It wasn't for the benefit of Sean Combs' businesses, because I think that's a key component there. If you're saying there's a criminal enterprise, everything that they do has to benefit. Everything they do has to benefit the Combs businesses or Combs himself. Didn't they get into that a little bit?
Well, as far as the cross-examination goes, I just got to tell you, Jesse, sometimes with the defense and their questioning, I never know where they're kind of going with this. Because even during cross, which was done by Mark Agnifilo, there was just a lot of, it felt like ego boosting of Diddy and just the role that he had had essentially in this world before all the allegations came out, before his arrest, before the indictment, and even before the trial, because there was just a lot of talk just about his career around the time, how he was a mogul, he had handled all these different businesses and clothing and lifestyle and television. And so there are a lot of times where they were just essentially talking about Diddy's businesses, and Diddy seemed to kind of really enjoy this testimony where they're just kind of reminding the jury just the impact that Diddy's businesses had, including just diversity and how that was important to Diddy, and how George Kaplan really was proud of his work while working with Diddy under Combs Enterprise at the time. And as far as just getting into just some of the responsibilities that he had, and that he had a checklist for everything, and he was asked about the other members of Diddy's staff, including the CFO of Combs Enterprise. He was asked about Diddy's friend who worked at Revolt. He was asked about the CEO of Revolt. He was asked about James Cruz, Diddy's manager, and just the roles that they had played in kind of helping Diddy just essentially throughout his career and get to him to where he is or where he was at that point in time. They touched base a little bit about Christina Coram and how that George and Christina had this professional relationship, and that he essentially learned to do the job from Christina Coram's guidance. That was something that he had said on the stand today. He said he did speak to Christina about the violence, and she expressed sadness when he would hear that Diddy was essentially physically assaulting his girlfriends, but she had no endorsement of Diddy's behavior, which I thought was an interesting point they said under cross, mainly because Christina Coram worked with Diddy until essentially just recently. And George said that it was really sad that these incidents had happened because there was another incident with Gina, another girlfriend of Diddy, who Cassie said that who Cassie had said was kind of a problem throughout their relationship because Diddy was dating both of them at the same time. Cassie was like, okay, you cannot see her anymore, and Diddy kept on seeing her. And then there was an incident at Diddy's home where Diddy was throwing apples at Gina, and that was another reason that George wanted to leave the job. And so he called these incidents horrible, but he said he didn't necessarily want to leave, but I think because of these incidents of violence that George said that he didn't want to do it anymore. And so then he was asked about Diddy's temper and how his temper didn't help his businesses. George was kind of pointing out that he had never worked harder in his life than he had worked with Diddy around that time period. The defense asked, was that a good or a bad thing? George said, I can't really answer that. They brought back the water incident where George was asked to get Diddy the specific alkaline water. He filled half of the gallon with water, or he filled half a gallon with one bottle, another half gallon, and then combined the bottle. Diddy didn't like it, threatened his job at that time, but didn't necessarily threaten George himself. And so as far as just the temper issue, George did admit the temper was kind of a lot for him to kind of handle around this time because he's in his early 20s while he's working for Diddy at this time. But then there were points during the cross where he said that Diddy was kind of inspirational, and that even to this day, or maybe possibly prior to his arrest, that George would wish Diddy well. He'd always tell him happy birthday. He invited Diddy to his wedding. Diddy didn't respond. And then just yesterday, just a little fun fact is they were talking about Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G., and they were talking about how most of Diddy's staff members on that day, which was yesterday, May 21st, that most of those staff members would actually get that day off because it's Biggie's birthday. So when they're talking about Biggie, Diddy's smiling inside the courtroom. He's kind of nodding at George. He seems a lot more jovial than he was, especially when Kid Cudi was testifying. But it seemed like, as far as from George's standpoint, really the only reason he left the job was because of these incidents of physical violence.
Yeah.
However, he didn't necessarily step in to help with those acts of violence either.
See, I think that's key for the defense. If they want to say that his temper, what he was doing, was not to benefit himself, was not to benefit the criminal enterprise, this wasn't a good thing. So it kind of defeats the prosecution's argument that all of this was beneficial. All of this was for a common purpose. All of this was, a good thing for the criminal enterprise. If you could think about a mafia organization, right? So if they were engaged in a series of crimes that brought the organization prestige, helped their reputation, brought in more money, you can understand how that makes sense and is digestible for a jury. Here, they're saying everything Combs was doing really didn't help this organization, really didn't help this criminal enterprise. I can see what they were saying here. Okay, so now it brings us to the testimony of a makeup artist, okay? What were some of the chilling details from this makeup artist? Because when I first heard that she was being called to the stand, and I understand a makeup artist for Cassie, the first thing I think is, oh, did she see injuries, and were these injuries that she covered up with makeup? Talk to us about what the makeup artist said.
So Mila Morales is a makeup artist, and she's been one who has been kind of vocal in recent interviews just about working with Cassie for a number of years, but also in that same respect, also working with Diddy as well. And so she had mentioned one incident. It was Grammy weekend of 2010, so a little while ago, and there was this party at Prince's house, so another Prince mention. She said that she had seen Cassie earlier in that day. They were at the, but they ended up going back to the Beverly Hills Hotel. Mila had fallen asleep, and then all of a sudden she wakes up and she hears this kind of commotion going on. Diddy somehow gets inside this hotel room. He comes in and says, "Where the F is she?" And she being Cassie. He was looking for Cassie. So he walked into the bedroom, and all of a sudden Mila could just hear screaming and yelling, and Mila said that she didn't know what to do, something that a lot of people have testified to as far as just what's their reaction when something like this happens, and a lot of them just freeze and don't necessarily know what to do. Then all of a sudden, next thing she knew, Diddy had stormed out of the bedroom and just essentially left the hotel, and she didn't see any type of injuries to Diddy. However, when she saw Cassie, she saw a swollen eye, she saw knots, she saw a busted lip, and then Mila said they picked up Cassie's stuff. She took Cassie over to her house, which was just about a mile away from this hotel, and Cassie had stayed with Mila for a few days at her home. Mila explained that she actually had a doctor friend who came over and kind of evaluated Cassie to see if everything was okay with her, because she said that she was worried that Cassie might have had a concussion. But she said Cassie did also have her stomach and her ribs checked out, and the doctor actually suggested for them to go to the emergency room. They didn't go to the emergency room because Mila said around that time she was afraid of Diddy, and that at the time she had feared for her life, but then there was kind of an objection. That objection was sustained, and so they kind of brought that back in again, where Mila explained she didn't call the police because she feared for her life. And so afterwards, when Cassie left Mila's house, they didn't acknowledge the situation or anything. Mila and Cassie specifically didn't acknowledge what happened. Mila and Diddy never spoke about this incident. However, this was an incident that Mila Morales did talk about in TV interviews, because she was asked about that under direct examination. But Mila explained that she wasn't paid to do the interviews. However, she did provide a photo to a news outlet of herself and Kim Porter, and said that she was paid $1,000 for those photo rights. And I think that the government tried to get ahead of this because they knew that the defense was going to be asking about this during her cross-examination. But as far as this particular incident in 2010, it seemed that it really impacted Mila, but that was the one incident that she had spoken about while she testified today.
Yeah, I knew the defense was going to have a field day with that, because the idea that she kept doing the media rounds and was getting paid for the photos, it would suggest she has a financial and reputational incentive to be a part of this story, to maybe go forward with these allegations, goes to her credibility. The final witness I want to talk to you about is this hotel manager, okay? I believe the name is Frederick Zamore, apologies if I mispronounced the name. But my understanding is this person revealed, Diddy allegedly used aliases to check into hotels, right? What were the names that Diddy allegedly used, and why does it matter?
Yeah, so when Frederick Zamore came into the courtroom today, I didn't necessarily know where his testimony would necessarily go. All we knew about him was that he was an employee at a hotel, but didn't know where that would kind of lead to. And so it was just a lot of exhibits with a lot of just kind of logs and documents just about everything. So some of the names that we had seen from the exhibits are just names related to Sean Combs. We saw that the name under the reservation would be under Ryan Lopez, and we saw so many of the name changes attached to that profile of Ryan Lopez, also for Sean Combs. And so we saw names including Jackie Starr. We saw Sean Combs. We saw Sean Combs be changed to Jackie Starr. We saw Jackie Starr be changed to Sean Combs, and then it was later changed to Ryan Lopez. And then we saw check-in logs. We saw checkout logs as well too. And there was just a lot of just quick documents that we were seeing, and they were just so small to read. But a lot of the big names that we saw again being Jackie Starr, Sean Combs, Ryan Lopez, Frank Black, a name that we know that Diddy used as an alias a number of times in a lot of other different circumstances. And so those were the big names that we saw in just a lot of those documents with a very small imprint on them. Also, another interesting thing that we saw, Jesse, was some of the profile notes. And those were essentially just the long list of notes attached to the profiles, normally about kind of the usuals that the guests would have when they checked into these hotels. But for this specific profile note that we saw things like always spill candle wax on everything and uses excessive amounts of oil, but didn't specify what type of oil, just said excessive amounts of oil. Place the room out of order upon departure for deep cleaning. Please authorize an extra $1,000 when guest stays with us to cover any room damages. And then we saw that if there needed to be credit card approval, it had to go through Eli Maroon, Dave Shirley, or Christina Coram. And so those three names specifically were Diddy's former assistants that we now know to be. But I just thought it was interesting as far as those specific profile notes, just about the candles, just about the oil. But there is also amenities too that were bought, I guess, at this hotel, such as fruit, such as water, such as chocolate, truffled chocolate as well, champagne and birthday cake. And so I think what the government was trying to do, because there was no cross-examination to this witness, was just kind of explain just what all goes into the hotel from the hotel staff's point of view, as far as what hotel staffers can normally expect whenever Sean Combs or his other aliases check into one of their rooms.
What a day. What a day. I mean, if people thought that week 2 of this trial was going to be slow, they were wrong. So now we go into what's next. What is next in this case, Elizabeth?
Yeah. So one of the things I love that the government always does is tell us what witnesses we're expecting towards the end of court. So this is normally a time where the jury has already gone. Some other people kind of leave the courtroom too, but I always kind of stick around to know what are we going to expect next. But what we can expect on Tuesday, because a lot of us are going to enjoy this very nice long weekend, myself included, and some of the jurors, and hopefully you too, Jesse. But what we can expect on Tuesday is another probably bombshell day, because guess who's testifying? Capricorn Clark. And Capricorn Clark used to work for Diddy. She was involved in a way with the whole Molotov cocktail situation with Kid Cudi. So we're expecting to hear from her just about everything that she witnessed during her time with Diddy, and even being friends with Cassie. The other witnesses that are going to be called after Capricorn Clark are going to be, I guess, an officer with LAPD as well as an officer with LAFD. So maybe it's going to be kind of in a continuation of the Kid Cudi allegations and the Molotov cocktail and possibly that. But they didn't go into, they didn't specify what the officers or even the firefighter might possibly talk about. But as far as Capricorn Clark goes, it's a witness I'm definitely kind of anxious to hear from.
Again, kidnapping, arson, these underlying predicate crimes for the overall racketeering charge, a charge that carries life in prison. I'm not surprised they might be focusing so much attention on those two potential underlying crimes. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much for your great reporting today and this.
All right. I mean, they got a lot of people speculating about Diddy, right? Life in prison, the arson, the this, the that. I want to look up something. Okay. As far as like the arson is concerned, right? What are the sentencing guidelines for arson to bring charges on somebody for arson? Like the, you know what I mean, like the time frame that you could bring charges. I mean, because they're saying like, okay, we want to give Diddy life in prison. The statute of limitations, right? So the statute of limitations for arson is generally 3 years. Understanding this time frame is essential as it significantly impacts potential arson penalties and available arson defenses, influencing legal strategy and the case outcome. What is the minimum time for arson? 16 months. for malicious burning of personal property. Okay? Diddy's not going to get nowhere close to no life sentence for speculations of him burning up Kid Cudi car. And they may not even be able to charge him. I don't even see why they were even able to charge him. That's in my state. Let me look up what it is in New York. What are the statute of limitations on arson in New York City? Oh, hold on a minute. In New York, Diddy, there are no statute of limitations for arson, meaning charges can be filed at any time. This applies to arson in the first degree. It's a Class A1 felony, while the general rule is that a prosecution must be instituted within a certain time frame. Arson is an exception to this rule. Woo, in New York, girl, they're not playing with y'all's asses, okay? If you commit arson and get caught and charged with it 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, then they can take you down through there and try to get you convicted of it. Okay? So, Class A is the worst severe felony. So in New York, how long after you commit a crime can you be charged? There is no time limit to bring charges for crimes like murder or actual assault. Less serious felonies have a 5-year statute of limitations. Okay, so that's essentially what they're trying to charge Diddy with, actual assaults and stuff, right? So they have no time limit to bring those charges for crimes. You can get 10 years for arson, 6 years for Class A or Class Y felonies. Okay. 5 years for felonies committed by public servants, and so on and so forth. There are no statute of limitations on arson in New York. Okay. Yeah. Oh my. So that will conclude our day. We're going to wrap up day 9, week 2 of the Diddy trial. I hope that you guys have, got your teacups filled. I'm Tanisha Talks Teas. Y'all drop y'all's teacups in the chat and ponder replay. Please like and subscribe when you come into the room and get your teacup filled up. Y'all let me know, why do y'all think that Diddy has not, been told to have done all these things, or said to have done all these things that we've heard per trial, right? Like the orgies that were drug induced and drug filled with the IVs, and you know what I'm saying, all of that, unless it's only week 2, only day 9. That's yet to be brought in, right? We have to continue to sip this tea, fill up our teacups, and see what's what, right? So yeah, like why do you think none of the gay narratives would come up about Diddy? I mean, a lot of that was going on, right? Drop that in the chat as well, along with your teacups. Why do you think that it's only ever been like Diddy, off in the cut somewhere watching, not ever involved or nothing so far that we hear? I haven't really heard too much testament to Diddy being involved in the freak-offs. Maybe they're watching something behind the curtain that we are not, from the tapes and stuff that they may have gotten from Diddy's homes. But we will have to continue to sip this tea and see. Thank you guys so much for joining Tanisha Talks Teas. on this Thursday evening. Hope you have a blessed day. Remember, please stay safe, as 5 of the Orland Parish inmates are still on the loose. I did some tea spilling on that earlier this morning. Make sure you get over there and watch part 1 and part 2. Okay, make sure you hit that notification bell so that you are always updated whenever I go live. I'm live right now on YouTube, hey, Facebook, hey, and Twitch. Okay, you can find me on all streaming platforms. Okay, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Thank you. Have a great rest of your night. Remember, be safe. Okay, keep your baby oil locked away. Diddy just might slide off. Okay, just might slide off. Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping.